Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 43, ch 43, eating well today. Ren was halfway through his chakra reserves, had only 2 shadow clones left, and Yagura was in front of him, angrier than ever and desiring nothing more than to rip him into shreds. Admittedly, he was not a very happy camper currently. In the same straightforward fashion, Yagura once more rushed at Ren, who started throwing kunai out at him, but at the ground in front of him, forcing him to run in a zigzag pattern to avoid the explosions. 3 seconds later, Yagura finally reached Ren and was about to deliver a devastating punch on his midsection when the clone next to him flickered through a few hand seals, summoning a wall of wind around them and bludgeoning Yagura away with it. Or at least, he tried. Yagura, however, pushed his 2 tails into the ground to anchor himself and unexpectedly withstood the force of the technique without minding that it reopened his injuries and made him spill enough blood onto the ground that Ren felt a bit sick from its overpowering smell. Any normal person would have been dead thrice over due to blood loss. The wind wall ceased, but Yagura did not pull his tails out of the ground, and Ren's eyes widened as he realized he was pulling the same trick that managed to kill several of his teammates. But his clone was faster and realized it sooner. Ren found himself grabbed and thrown away from the spot, watching the clone be absolutely slaughtered by the chakra tails that suddenly burst from the ground as he flew through the air. Just like that, he only had 1 more clone left and he was starting to feel really nervous about it. Landing on the ground in a roll, Ren rolled onto his feet and instantly had to guard against Yagura's punch because the Jinhyura ki somehow managed to catch up to him. The burning chakra cloak smashed into Ren's forearm alongside his fist, and Ren felt his forearm pushed back enough to press against his chest before he was lifted from the ground. Confusion filled his mind, before he smashed into a nearby felled tree trunk with a loud "gah," and the pain of multiple cracked bones filled his mind. Yagura hit like a truck, and Ren now understood why his clones went down so easily. Only because of the chakra reinforcement did he survive the punch without breaking anything. Ren slid down the felled tree trunk until his posterior landed on the ground and then shook his head, before he abruptly threw himself to the side out of sheer survival instinct, barely evading Yagura's fist. He still gained a new cut alongside his right biceps, but it was preferable to having his right arm turned to a paste. As he landed on the ground and rolled onto his feet, Ren unsealed the scroll. He pushed himself a bit away from Yagura and unrolled the scroll around himself in a similar manner to Tenten during her preliminary match. This was his trump card and he did not exactly want to use it because it was not nearly finished. Plus, he could not use it with teammates near him. But since they were all dead, that was no longer an issue. From the corner of his eyes, Ren noticed his clone already sprinting away, trying to make more distance between him and Ren. Then, the scroll activated and hundreds of exploding tags danced around the surrounding area for over 100 meters while Ren was shielded by a chakra barrier forming around him. Yagura blinked as he was fully covered in exploding tags. Ren glared at him, hoping this would work, and the exploding tags went off. All happening in the same second. A massive booming serenade of numerous explosions engulfed the area, devastating it even more than it previously had been. It lasted for 20 seconds, and when it was finally over and the dust settled, Ren appeared standing in the epicenter of it as the chakra barrier covering him flickered out of existence when it ran out of chakra. Yagura was much worse off. His chakra cloak was gone and the left side of his face looked burned off. Ren could see the skinless muscles of his chest, some of his ribs peeking through them. In one particular hole on his chest, his beating heart was slightly visible too. Yagura was also missing his right hand straight from the elbow down, and his right thigh had a chunk of it missing, making him limp and put more weight on his left leg as his shoulders slumped in exhaustion. Ren released a sigh of relief upon seeing his opponent. Finally something worked. Suddenly, Ren was smacked away as he barely managed to raise his arms in a lackluster guard as Yagura, who flickered near him, punched him with his remaining hand, the red chakra around him reigniting. Ren's body painfully plowed into the ground 20 meters away, his left arm definitely broken at the elbow from the haphazard block. But the worst part was that Yagura did not regain just 2 tails. No. He started growing his 3rd tail and his skin became gray as he started shifting. Ren's remaining clone suddenly appeared in front of Yagura, starting to hurl his hands at him in fast-paced motions, and with every strike he fastened 1 yin containment seal on Yagura. Nuda! 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 The clone repeatedly shouted, and Ren involuntarily snorted, all tension leaving him. It didn't last long. One of Yagura's 3 tails that were halfway shifted into sandbys smashed the clone into bits, dispelling it. But that fortunately didn't matter. Yagura had over 10 yin containment seals on him by that point, and they managed to disrupt the Baijuya transformation enough that he shifted back to his base human form, with no red chakra cloak to boot. This is just not fair at all. Ren inwardly grumbled when he saw the exhausted Yagura stumble a bit. He was still missing his right hand and his left eye was not restored, but most of his other very serious injuries were already healed from the 2 seconds he was almost fully transformed into a Baijuyu. So, up for that conversation now? Ren asked the Mizukage as he wobbly raised himself onto his feet, his broken arm dangling next to his body. He truly did not have much chakra left. If he could disengage by talking, he would take that option despite Yagura being responsible for his team's death. It burned his pride, but it was also the smart thing to do in his current state. At least, Yagura still seemed to have problems with the gravity seals covering him. He still leaned to the right due to the weight of the seals on his right arm. The man silently looked at Ren, but he didn't give him a verbal answer. He just unsealed his staff and ripped almost every yin containment seal off of his body, causing Ren to release a frustrated sigh. I take that as no. He muttered as he got into a fighting stance in preparation for Yagura's attack. Honestly, he had no idea if fighting Yagura in the two-tailed mode was worse than fighting him as an S-rank ninja with all his mental faculties intact. Thank the sugar daddy sage that Yagura was injured and exhausted. Otherwise, Ren wouldn't like his chances at survival very much. Their match was however interrupted when a gleeful voice resounded from the side and Ren felt a chill go up his spine when he recognized that voice. He thought his situation was already bad enough, having barely 30% of his chakra reserves available while facing S-rank Jinchuriki, albeit an exhausted and injured one. But apparently, fate was not yet done with its bullshit. "Oh, would you look at that, Itake-kun? I see 2 easy targets. Samehata is going to eat well today." Chapter 44, ch 44, Tsunade level of luck. Ren's head snapped toward the voice, only for his stomach to sink when he saw Kisame freaking Hashigaki and Itake fucking Uchiha slowly approaching them as if they owned the place, red clouded clocks and all. What in the actual fuck is wrong today with my luck? Ren couldn't help but whine under his nose. This was starting to get ridiculous. At this point, Tsunade had probably better luck than him. Ren and Yagura glanced at each other, and both understood they would need to team up if they wanted a chance at survival. Ren's shoulders slumped in resignation as his eyes landed once more on the approaching duo of S-rank criminals. He was so done with this bullshit. "Nice to meet you again," Itake politely said toward Ren, making him confused. As far as he knew, they had never met. Ren opened his mouth, a question on the tip of his tongue, but then he just decided it was unimportant right now. Because he was a tad bit preoccupied with evading Kisame's Samehata that had just smashed into the spot he stood a split second ago. Kisame didn't press his advantage. He just stood in front of Ren, relaxed and grinning like a kid in the candy store, while Itake faced Yagura. Ren's lips twitched. "Heh, I might be in trouble," he thought, hurting all over his body. Yagura hit him only twice but both blows were devastating. He was so not in the condition to fight a freaking S-rank ninja right now. His mind going a mile a minute, Ren was trying to figure out what he could do here, only to see Itake instantly casting Tsukuyomi on Yagura. To his immense shock, the technique hit Yagura, knocking him out, but Ren noticed the only remaining incontainment seal still stuck on the Jinchuriki's back reacting. Ren's breath hitched as he realized he had a chance and he quickly looked at the smug Kisame who was enjoying his slow descent into despair. "Oi, sushi boy. How big was the shark that fucked yo mama?" Ren quickly blurted the first yo mama joke that came to his mind upon glancing at Kisame while sweat rolled down his forehead. He didn't even know why he said that one. It just sounded like something that would piss the sharkman off. Kisame just snorted in amusement and gave Ren a quick eye roll. He heard shark jokes far too often to be bothered by them. But that didn't matter because Ren's goal was accomplished when Kisame decided to go on the offensive. 3 things happened at once in a quick succession. Itake's Tsukuyomi finished. 3 seconds after he cast it, Yagura slumped onto the ground, unconscious. But Itake also released a painful scream, clutching at his eyes that were now profusely bleeding as he fell on his knees and only his left arm prevented him from falling onto the ground. Ren had no idea what the yin containment seal had done to Itake's Tsukuyomi, but clearly, it was nothing pleasant. He didn't have time to rejoice about it as Kisame was already lazily swinging his massive overcompensation stick at him, intending to shred him to pieces. Ren substituted with the unconscious Yagura at the last second, making Kisame go slack-jawed as his sword went straight through the Jinchuriki's chest, shredding his heart, lungs, ribcage, and all that was in its path. Yagura's deceased body fell onto the ground in a puddle of blood in 2 pieces. The standby gone for the next several years. Ren inwardly released an exhausted chuckle. There was really only one reason why Itake and Kisame would appear this close to Yagura. But, fuck the pricks and their mission. Ren quickly sank into the ground with the hiding like a mole technique while using the last of his chakra to leave a shadow clone in his place. It was a gamble but, he couldn't think of anything else that had a chance of working against the S-rank duo. Above the ground, Kisame finally snapped out of his funk and Itake managed to push through the pain enough to focus on what had happened. Kisame's expression twisted into an angry scowl and he prepared to destroy Ren's clone who was grinning at him like a loon who had just won, flipping him off in the process. "Don't bother. It's a shadow clone." Itake easily saw through the ruse and Kisame huffed. The expression of Ren's clone fell as he cursed under his nose and tried to, never mind. Kisame appeared behind him and the clone puffed out of existence before he could even realize he died. "Where is the original?" Kisame irritably asked Itake who nodded toward the ground. "Underground," the Uchiha dispassionately said and Kisame clicked his tongue before starting to go through hand seals, only to be stopped by Itake who put his hand on Kisame's, stopping his formation of hand seals for his technique. "Don't bother. His oxygen will run out soon and he will resurface," Itake said, only for his eyes to slightly widen in surprise a moment later. "What?" Kisame asked when he saw it. He learned to read his partner during their time together and for a Uchiha, that slight widening of eyes might as well be screaming in shock. "He disappeared," Itake said, his brows furrowing. "How?" Kisame frowned, his hold on Samehata tightening. "I have no idea." Itake's lips twitched as he glanced at Yagura, his face almost unreadable. "The leader won't be happy about this," Kisame warned as he glanced at Yagura's corpse, his lips set into a scowl but Itake simply uncaringly shrugged. "Let's go back." He turned around and started walking away, followed by unhappy Kisame just a second later. Deep down, Kisame swore to himself he was going to brutally murder that smug Konoha bastard who made them fail the mission the next time he met him. Back in Ren's apartment in Konoha, Ren suddenly teleported straight onto his couch with a loud crash, inwardly thanking the sugar daddy sage for whatever made Kisame delay his technique. He still needed 5 seconds to charge the transportation seal when he felt Kisame's surge of chakra, but for some reason, he stopped midway. Holy shit, I am alive. Ren let out a quiet but disbelieving laughter full of relief, only to wince a second later due to the pain surging through his body. His landing was not very smooth. His legs were on top of the couch's backrest while his head was on the ground with his body everywhere in between. It hurt as hell, but he couldn't move anymore. Suddenly, he heard fast footsteps closing in on him and he barely managed to turn his head toward the door, only to see Ino enter the room. Her expression instantly became full of horror when she saw the state he was in and the puddle of blood that was forming under him and painting his precious green couch red. His poor couch. Hello, beautiful. Do you perhaps have any band-aid for my boob? He asked the blonde girl with an eye smile, only to hear a small whimper from her. Personally, he thought his left arm bent in a direction it should never be bending and was probably ruining the whole cool impression. Chapter 45, ch 45, Ino's panic. Hello, beautiful. Do you perhaps have any band-aid for my boob? The second Ren uttered those words he inwardly cringed. His mind must have been disoriented due to the pain. That was seriously uncool. And flirting with his student? His image as an amazing teacher basically crumbled to dust. Alas, it seemed Ino was too fretful due to his injured state and her mind didn't even register Ren's flirting as she approached him. Her body was slightly shaking and her eyes were wide in fright. This was most likely the first time the girl saw an injured ninja fresh out of the battlefield, and Ren had to admit he was a proper mess right now. He grimaced a bit, which only made him try to hide another painful wince. He was probably a gruesome sight for the girl. Ino put her shaky hand on Ren's uninjured arm, trying to do it gently as if afraid a touch would shatter him like glass. What happened to you? She half whispered, half shrieked, obviously panicking. That is not really important right now, Ino-chan, Ren slowly said with a visible effort. Even speaking was a hard task when many of his bones were cracked and most of his muscles were bruised. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Ino hysterically repeated, her eyes darting all over Ren with dread written in them while her mind was clearly going a mile a minute but supplying the girl with no useful thought to grab onto. Stop panicky! Ren shouted, knowing he needed to get the girl out of her funk. Or at least, he tried, but he had to stop midway due to a sudden spike of pain racing through his body. He promised to himself right there and then that the girls would undergo some first aid training the hospital was freely offering, because Ino should have helped him get into a more comfortable position by now instead of asking stupid questions and panicking like a kid. Then again, he probably should have made them do that first aid training long ago. Hindsight was 20/20. There were simply far too many things to learn for a fledgling ninja, many of which even he hadn't learned yet, and Ren was sometimes feeling like there just wasn't enough time in the day. And was that High-Ray Shin? You can use High-Ray Shin. Ren's attempt at shouting clearly did not help as much as he hoped because Ino was still going, not even registering it. Since when can my teacher use Hira-Ino? Ren harshly grabbed the girl's hand with his uninjured hand before gritting his teeth as another spike of pain made his slight spasm, which only aggravated the injuries all over his body, cue another spasm and pain that just made other injuries flare and, God fucking damn it. Ren mentally cursed as he sent some chakra from his dangerously low chakra reserves through his body, quieting down the intense pain spikes. No, it is not High-Ray Shin. Yes, it is a secret, so don't go gossiping about it. He gritted out through the pain and spoke in a tone full of exasperation. Could you focus on getting me help now? Preferably before I bleed out. That, fortunately, finally managed to kick Ino's mind into gear. Alright, sorry. I'll get, before it inevitably crashed not 2 seconds later. Hinata. Ren reminded the blonde with a small sigh that came out more as a hiss. She is good enough medic. Get her here. Don't tell anybody else. But, Ino weakly protested with a hesitant worry etched in her expression. Ren got it. She probably wanted to take him to the hospital to get proper treatment, and he would love nothing else than to go to the hospital himself. Some of that sweet medical jutsu mojo they were selling there was exactly what his damaged body needed. Unfortunately, people in this life were not stupid like in all those garbage-bashing fanfictions he read during his previous one. Questioning how he got to Konoha so fast with an injured body like that would undoubtedly be the first thing coming to their mind. After all, Ren's impromptu team left on the supply mission just this morning and he was already back with some outrageous tales of fighting Yagura in Jinchuriki mode, encountering 2 S-rank criminals, and somehow managing to get Yagura killed by outsmarting 2 S-rank ninja and running away? All in one day? With no witness? Yeah, frankly, even Ren had a hard time believing it actually happened. He would be lucky if he didn't end up locked in the TNI department if that was the angle he tried to play. No. He needed to get fit enough for his body to not spontaneously decide to give up on him. Then, he needed to teleport back to the battlefield where Yagura died, preferably 1 or 2 days later. Hopefully, the Akatsuki dipsits would not be camping there. They had no reason to do it. It's not like they would know Ren would be coming back or something, right? After that, Ren decided to trek back to Konoha on foot, creating a nice trail and a few witnesses so that anybody investigating would have an easy time. That should give the village higher UPS time to get at least some information on what happened in the Land of Waves. Ren had no idea if or how much damage Yagura caused before encountering their team, but an enraged Jinchuriki who fired 2 blasted Baiju Utama was definitely noticed by somebody. The explosions were probably seen and felt all over the island. He would not be surprised if all cages had a report about Yagura's rampage on their table by the next morning. The spies on the Kiri side would also notify Konoha if Yagura went out and did not return. So, coming back a few days later would make things much easier to explain for Ren because the Hokage will already possess all these small bits of information independent of his report and the man will make his own assumptions based on them. Without asking Ren how he practically teleported all the way from the Land of Waves back to Konoha. Was it troublesome? Yeah, Ren hated it. He would love nothing more than to gift himself some nice time in the hospital right now and tell the Hokage to go fuck himself with a cactus. But he just couldn't afford to get more attention from Konoha's higher UPS. Sarutobi was one thing, but Danzo and the elders? No, thank you very much. Ren looked Ino directly in the eyes. That's an order. He flatly said, but his tone also fully conveyed how serious he was, making Ino momentarily freeze. Right. The girl awkwardly nodded, and switched into her professional mode. Understood. With that, she was off to get Hinata and Ren relaxed, before a helpless smile appeared on his face. Yeah, no. He blankly blinked at the ceiling. She could have at least helped me to properly lie down on the couch first. He exasperatedly complained, still sprawled in the uncomfortable position he landed in. Chapter 46, ch 46. A bit too much. If Ren thought that Ino was bad, then he was certainly not prepared for how fussy Hinata got when she saw his injured state. He got scolded like a misbehaving child, but it only managed to draw out a small amused smile out of him. Hinata was a sweetheart. He appreciated how caring she was. She flat out refused to go home, intending to stay with him for the night to monitor his injuries. It took Ren an entire hour to finally make the stubborn girl crack and accept that going home was necessary. The Hyagas would have a hissy fit if Hinata didn't come home for the night. They would start asking where she was, and neither Hinata nor Ren would be able to answer, making the situation that much worse. So, Hinata reluctantly left, but she was back by 6 a.m. the next day, and even Ino showed up by 8 a.m. Fortunately, both girls listened to Ren's request to keep his presence in the village secret. They did not like it, due to many reasons, but they obeyed. Of course, Ren had to promise Ino that he would explain why he didn't seem to have unshakable trust in Konoha after he reported to the Hokage. He was not looking forward to that discussion. A part of him was unhappy that he would have to introduce Ino to the ugly part of the ninja world she was so far sheltered from. Another part was anxious about how the girl would take the fact that Konoha was not the paragon of virtue, considering all the Will of Fire propaganda classes that were taught at the academy. But he mostly just found it bothersome that he had to figure out a proper speech to explain the situation in a coherent way that made sense. It was such a bother. To him, it felt as if he was going to try unfuck his coworkers fuck up. Excuse him for not being exactly motivated to do it. At least, Hinata didn't seem to care. The whole everybody in Konoha is our family kinda fell flat for her when her own family treated her like shit. No, the problem with her was that she didn't like Ren intending to go out, still injured, and walk back to Konoha all the way from the Land of Waves. The girl could be very stubborn when she wanted, and at the end of the day, Ren ended up promising her to take her out for Ichiraku ramen before she relented and let him go and injure himself more. See if she cared, were her words. With a cute huff on top. Ren appreciated her care, but he was also a bit relieved when he finally teleported back to the Land of Waves. Between Ino's annoying badgering to tell her more about his Hiraishin and Hinata's unhappy and disapproving looks, he had just about enough teenage girls for the next few days. Now, he was already back in Konoha after walking injured through half of the Land of Fire, and he instantly ended up in hospital after the medic ninjas fixed him up. The downside? The monkey reject currently filling his freaking hospital room with smoke from his pipe. I see. That is quite disconcerting, but it would explain why Yagura did not return to the Kiri camp. The third Hokage gravely said after getting the verbal report from Ren, who lay on the bed, to think people like Itaki and Kisame are hunting the Jinchuriki. He frowned, eyes looking out of the window as his mind was clearly lost in troubled thoughts of the uncertain future. Ren stayed silent, not volunteering any reply to the old man's musings. He had an entire day to think about how to modify his report for his own greater good. It was quite bothersome because he had to take into account the possibility of Itaki reporting the incident back to the village at some point. Because of that, Ren's report had to loosely match the real happenings. You were lucky to flee while Yagura engaged Itake and Kisame. Sarutobi looked back at Ren and shook his head. It's at least one small mercy during this tragedy. His shoulders sagged and his age showed on his face. Unfortunately, Ren was informed that Yagura ran through the main Konoha camp in the Land of Waves like a knife through butter before he encountered Ren's team. Nobody from the 100 ninjas in there survived. But hey, the war was over. As for Sarutobi believing that Yagura engaged Itaki and Kisame, it was an innocent misdirection. Ren only reported he used the substitution technique with weakened Yagura to evade a blow from Kisame before running away. He never mentioned in what state Yagura was at the time or that the blow was fatal. It was all just Hiruzen's assumptions that Ren did not correct. Yagura was a cage-level ninja and a Jinchuriki on top of that. It was easy to assume that he would survive the substitution trick with ease. And frankly, if he had been conscious, he probably would have. But it didn't matter. Ren was painting an image he wanted, founded mostly on truths and half-truths. Even if Itachi reported the true happenings, it could be chalked up to battlefield confusion on Ren's side. He actually did put a lot of effort into making his story as smooth as possible. Lying to a cage was anything but easy. They were extremely perceptive people. They lived as liars their entire lives and honed the craft to perfection. They were the pinnacle of it. Even his yin containment seal's prowess was highly downplayed by Ren. He didn't report that they stopped to buy Juudama, and he made sure to complain about Yagura always ripping the seal tags off, or how they seemed to barely work at restraining his chakra. Ren made sure to sound that the seals working were more due to luck than his skill at fuinjutsu, and since there was no witness, there was nobody to disprove how ineffective the seals truly were. Nor did Ren report that the seal stopped Itachi's Tsukuyomi. He simply did not even mention Itachi and his actions in his report other than the fact he was present. After all, he couldn't exactly pay attention to the rogue Uchiha when he was facing somebody like Kisame, right? He was just a poor Chunin who served due to a massive bout of luck. Naturally, many people will call bullshit. Ren counted on that. But that was fine. As long as the report didn't give them political ammunition to cry for punishment or demand his seal work, Ren didn't care. There wasn't really a clean way out of this mess. He went on a mission and the result was a dead cage while he was the only survivor from his team. The situation was fishy by default, misleading the Hokage into thinking that Itachi and Kisame were there for Yagura, which was a complete truth. They just never outright stated it as Ren reported, would hopefully make Konoha do some actual preparation since they now knew a very strong people were hunting Jinchuriki. Yeah, Ren bled due to his recent misfortune and he would be damned to not milk it for all it was worth. Yes. Honestly? The most baffling thing about the whole encounter was Itachi's greeting. I have no idea what he meant by nice to meet you again. I have never met him in my life. Ren said, looking quite troubled. And he didn't even need to act. He was truly bothered by it. As far as he knew, he hadn't met Itachi even once before this unfortunate encounter. But clearly, that wasn't the truth. Alas, since it was a good mystery to make Hokage focus on, Ren was using it. The Hokage, however, just chuckled, much to Ren's surprise. Ah, yes. I think I can explain that one. His eyes gained a bit of warm mirth and if he wasn't completely flabbergasted, Ren would have to admit the old coot was a great actor himself. I remember young Itachi reporting to me that he met an interesting kid one day during his undercover patrol. Sarutobi said in a nostalgic tone before looking at Ren with a small indulgent smile, do you remember having a discussion with an old man about why kids shouldn't go to the battlefield? About why Hashirama made this village? The more the Hokage talked, the flatter Ren's expression became, until he stared at the old man with a completely emotionless deadpan. He did have a very vague recollection of popping off on some dude and ranting about what absolute and ineffective bullshit using child soldiers was due to stress. It wasn't his proudest moment. Inwardly, Ren's mind was reeling, no. Not like this, he pleaded for this to not go in the direction his gut was telling him. He thought his abysmal luck combo was over. Itachi was always great at genjutsu. Sarutobi chuckled, and fooling a kid was no great feat for him, even when he was one himself. He sadly sighed, his eyes reflecting his sorrow for a moment before they regained their spark. The conversation you had with him, it hit him hard. The old man continued with renewed vigor, and I have to admit, it moved me too. It's what fanned the will of fire within me and gave me the motivation to make the Academy reforms despite my initial misgivings. To make the Academy great again. For that, I am grateful to you. His tone was serene, happy, and satisfied. And why wouldn't he? These reforms changed the world of ninjas and Hiruzen Sarutobi was forevermore going to be remembered as their initiator. Nobody could take that from him. Even if he was discovered to be a complete scum later on, this single great achievement would always be a massive badge of honor for his personage. Fuck me with a cactus. But Ren didn't share Hiruzen's satisfaction. He still just blankly stared at the man, fully in disbelief at the monumentally groundbreaking bullshit he had just heard. No. Ren thought with mounting horror, this dipshit is telling me that it was actually my fault for the canon plot to be utterly fucked up before I even graduated from the academy. All because of one insignificant conversation he did not even remember? What the hell? He expected butterflies due to his actions. But this? Wasn't this a bit too much? Chapter 47, ch 47, hospital visit. Of course, after that, the ancient monk reject finally left Ren's hospital room, leaving him mind-blown and barely responsive to the world. Ren inwardly admitted his defeat. The man was an undisputed pinnacle of ninjahood. With just a few words, he totally massacred Ren's confidence without even trying. Truly, a killer without a peer. If just a few words could change this much, Ren realized that no matter how much he tried to keep things in line, it simply would not work. It wasn't a question of effort. The real world simply did not work that way. Alas, Ren was not left to his musings for long because a minute after the third Hokage left, Ino and Hinata entered his hospital room. Seeing Ino's determined face, Ren's mood soured even more. Yes, he promised her an explanation after he reported to the Hokage, but did she really need to stomp into his room not a minute after the old man left? Couldn't she let him mentally reel in peace for a bit? Was asking for 5 minutes full of silent self-pity and brooding too much? Truly, when it rains, it pours. Though, Ren could understand. Ino, despite her flirty attitude, was still a kid deep down. She was naive, didn't think things through, and didn't even bother to see underneath the underneath. She was also the heiress of the Yamanaka clan. Konoha will always be important to her because this is the place where her family lives. Adding to that the academy propaganda. Yeah, Ren was actually happy the girl was reasonable enough to be willing to hear him out before arbitrarily deciding he was a traitor because he was willing to voice out that Konoha sucked. Not that it would affect his standing in the village or anything. Most ninjas in the village came to that conclusion during their careers. It was an open secret and the higher UPS learned to live with it. As long as the ninjas stayed loyal, the higher UPS did not care if they lost their naive outlook on the village. Ren just didn't want to engage in more teenage drama. He wanted to slowly ease the girls into this realization as months, maybe 1 or 2 years, passed, but looking at Ino's peeved expression, Ren realized neither of them would get that luxury. She had already waited 2 days and it didn't seem she was up for waiting any longer. He mentally grimaced as he realized he would have to pull the big guns and shove some really disturbing examples in front of her innocent and naive eyes. He didn't like having to do it, but he needed her to realize that the real world wasn't a fairy tale where everybody is a friend because they are from the same village. Her rose-tinted glasses had to be discarded. Well, Ino stopped in front of Ren's bed and asked, her arms crossed on her chest. Ren smiled a bit. She looked cute when she was angry. He looked at Hinata next to her, but the Hyuga girl just casually shrugged. She clearly did not care about his reason for distrusting Konoha's leadership. She took his medical chart that was pinned to his bed and started reading. What she did care about was apparently his health, and that made Ren's smile widen into a grateful one. First, calm down, he calmly said as he looked back at Ino, who just huffed. I am calm. Right. Hinata didn't forget to add a bit of sarcasm into her tone as she visibly rolled her eyes, causing Ino to give her an irritated look. Fine. Ino let her arms fall along her body as she relaxed her posture. Just, I like you, teacher. She balled her hands into fists and looked down while chewing on her lower lip. Don't go betraying the village, please. I don't think I could handle that, she said in a quiet but pleading tone, making Ren sigh. Teenage girls. Stop inserting so much unnecessary drama and angst into everything. He deadpanned and both girls gave him a flat look at that. Ino even added a scowl, much to his amusement. Right. Come here. Ren patted the sides of his bed and Ino looked at Hinata for confirmation. Unfortunately for the blonde girl, Hinata just happily stepped forward and took her seat on the right side of Ren's bed. Then she grabbed his right hand into her hands and supportively squeezed while averting her eyes by ducking her head with a small blush covering her cheeks. Ren appreciated the supportive gesture, but unfortunately, he didn't see her reaction because his eyes were firmly set on Ino. Sighing to herself, the blonde girl followed, taking her place on the left side of his bed before, much to his surprise, taking his left hand and copying Hinata with a displeased huff. When Ren lifted an eyebrow at her gesture with an amused smile dancing on his face, Ino flushed. It's just to ensure you don't try anything funny, she retorted, giving the squeeze all her strength and her petty revenge, probably trying to make it somewhat hurt. Ren nodded. Right. Both of his hands were restrained by beautiful girls. Oh, woe is him. See what he meant? Teenage drama everywhere. Sadly, Ren had to forego teasing Ino. They would get nowhere if he started because she would try to match him. He actually did want to resolve their issues, so best to get to that. Could you scan the room, Hinata? Ren asked, glancing at her, only to feel supremely embarrassed because he instantly had to channel chakra to the lower part of his body. It would be very awkward if he popped a boner right now. Ren was still just a man and she was downright adorable and gorgeous at the same time. It took a considerable effort to keep his attraction from showing, but fortunately, his focus was quickly caught by how the veins around her eyes bulged despite her not releasing his hand. She had managed to use Byakugan without hand seals. That was new. Ren knew she couldn't properly do that when he was leaving for the clusterfuck of a mission. Hinata, noticing that he was looking at the area around her eyes and guessing his thoughts, gave him a winning smile full of pride. There is nobody but us in the room. Ren chuckled. Good. He gave her a brief proud smile. I'll need my hands now. His hands were reluctantly released by the girls and he unsealed 4 tags, giving each girl 2. They knew what to do with them because he used them to secure his apartment from spying eyes when he was getting patched up after Yagura wrecked him. They stood up without a prompt and put 1 tag in the middle of each wall in the room, creating an invisible ceiling barrier that would prevent anybody from eavesdropping or looking into the room with a Byakugan. My clan would go crazy if they knew something like this existed. Hinata mirthfully mused as she sat back on the right side of his bed and unashamedly took Ren's hand gently into hers again. Ino finished with her tags just a second later and did the same thing as Hinata, but Ren actually started inching his hand away from her when she sat down. It didn't deter her as she forcefully grabbed his hand. Oi, be gentle, woman. Ren complained without any heat in his tone, only to get an unamused look from Ino. Still, there was a bit of pink in her cheeks, so he counted it as his win. Start talking, she retorted, but her grip on his hand relaxed, her thumb subconsciously running circles across his hand. Ren had to admit she had very tender hands. They were very enjoyable to touch, but it also made him wonder how the hell did she accomplish that. She studied Kenjutsu, for Sage's sake. She should have calluses all over her hands, but Ino suddenly pinched his hand, pulling Ren out of his reverie, her eyes holding a threat of more pinches if he dared to stay silent for a moment longer. Ren inwardly grimaced. Yes, he was stalling. Sue him. With a sigh, he quickly checked the detection seal he had on his body, getting no positive result outside the 3 of them. Then, he checked the barrier covering the room. There was no life force outside the 3 of them inside his ceiling barrier. Good. That meant there was indeed no Umbu hiding in the room. As much as he wanted to trust Hinata's Byakugan fully, she was not even a genin yet. The Hokage might have looked like he believed Ren's report fully, but one just never knows with old coots like him. They might be openly smiling at you while preparing a dagger behind their backs. It was better to triple check these things. Now ouch. Ren yelped as Ino pinched him again, this time with way more strength, making Hinata giggle at their antics. Stop being so troublesome, Ino exasperatedly said, and Ren gave her a grin. I was just checking if we are really alone. No need for domestic abuse, dear. The joke's on her. She was no longer even a bit angry. Dealing with an exasperated female was much easier than dealing with an angry one. Ren counted this one as a success. Chapter 48 ch 48. The Will of Fire. Do you believe in the Will of Fire, Ino? Ren asked, looking the girl in the eyes, trying to convey how serious he was. Of course, I do, Ino exclaimed, feeling a bit offended that he had to ask. You don't? She reproachfully asked back. But Ren only shrugged. Nah, it's garbage. Hinata chuckled while Ino stared at him as if he had kicked her puppy, with her jaw almost on the floor. All in all, their reaction was just as Ren expected. 2/3 of this village's ninjas do not believe in it, or at least, not in the self-sacrificial way the higher UPS would like them to. Ren told the girls inside it comes with experience and insight into what the village does. What's that supposed to mean? Ino quietly asked, really not liking what she was hearing. The Yamanaka led their children to be very loyal to Konoha, and there was a reason for it. Ren doubted the village would suffer mind-readers among their ranks if the higher UPS were not fully assured that they were raised to be loyal. Knowing this, Ren decided to give Ino a proper example. A very disturbing one at that. Something that had the potential to shake her. Something quite brutal. He turned toward Hinata and said, tell me, Hinata, what would happen to you if Kumo succeeded in kidnapping you? Hinata, startled by being suddenly dragged into the discussion and asked such a question, momentarily stuttered, I would have been raised to be a breeding stock. She furrowed her eyebrows and pursed her lips in displeasure at having to think about it. And you would have been made to believe it is your duty too. Ren nodded and said in a matter-of-fact tone, you were young enough that they could have manipulated you in whichever way they wanted. You would have been raised believing that popping kids for the village is your glorious purpose. Hinata grimaced at that and Ren almost winced at how tightly she squeezed his hand. Unfortunately for both of them, Ren was not done, but what if they failed? Or rather, what if you were kidnapped now? He asked and had to bite the inside of his cheek because he could almost hear his bones creaking because of the girl's hold on his hand. Feeling how uncomfortable Hinata was becoming, Ino decided to intervene. Is there any actual purpose in this change of topic, or are you just trying to make us feel disturbed enough to be distracted? She asked in her usual high-pitched irritated tone, and Ren inwardly sighed in relief when Hinata stopped crushing his hand. Bless Ino for saving him from broken bones this day. Not showing his grateful thoughts, Ren looked at Ino with a blank expression and nodded. She would be restrained to the bed, drugged and under heavy genjutsu, while specially selected jonin, mostly the biggest scum from the village but ones with good genes, would have their way with her body as much as they wanted until they got her pregnant. Then, they would let her give birth, rest for a month, before repeating the process until her body gave out from popping out kids. He flatly said in a measured but uninterrupted tone, and the atmosphere in the room became awkward as it was engulfed in complete silence. After a moment, Ren sighed and with a sad, bland smile, he asked, it's scummy, isn't it? Yes. Hinata quietly said while Ino was more vocal. Of course, it is. It's disgusting, she shouted, completely aggravated. As kunoichi in training, the topic hit them a bit closer to home for them. Konoha is better than Kumo. Ren sagely nodded, noticing from the corner of his eyes how Hinata's eyes suddenly went wide in disbelief. So, she caught on, huh? He wryly smiled in his mind. His Hayaga cinnamon roll was really smart. Konoha would never do that. Ino vehemently agreed and Ren felt almost bad that he would have to burst her bubble. His blonde student wasn't the fastest on the uptake, especially not when she got emotional. He chuckled, weird that you think so. He raised an eyebrow at the still aggravated blonde. I pretty much described what is being done by Konoha to the captured enemy shinobi with valuable genes. He dropped a bomb. Honestly? Ren had to admit he did enjoy Ino's flabbergasted look full of disbelief. She looked like a kid who was told that Santa was not real. There is a special brothel deep in Konoha's red light district, open only for the high-ranking ninjas with good genes who can pay for access to a captured shinobi for a night. He added, giving the blonde a meaningful look, it's a win-win for the village. I heard the place is not exactly cheap. Ren's amusement instantly vanished because now it was Ino who was crushing his hand while she was biting her lower lip as she looked down and tried to come to grips with the revelation. Why was he still holding their hands in support? At this rate, they were going to cause him more harm than Yagura did halfway through their fight. Hinata, however, realized an important facet of the whole thing. What about the kids? She meekly asked, her expression showing she was afraid to ask the question but powered through her fear. Ren gave her a smile he hoped was reassuring, but he wouldn't count on it. There is a reason the orphanages are so full in this village, especially with kids whose parents are unknown, and that floored the girls even more if their expressions were to be believed. He understood how they felt. After all, he went through the same feelings when he found out. That was a breathtaking revelation, and not in a good way. The anime truly did not show the real dark side of the ninja world. Then again, the anime was a show for kids. So, duh. Why? Ino feebly asked, her body slightly shaking. Bloodline limits. Ren plainly told her, Konoha indeed does not do it as much as other villages. He had to give credit where credit was due. Most captured ninjas are executed after their interrogation. But it still does happen. Then why are there no new clans in the village since its founding? Ino verbally lashed out, desperately trying to find holes in Ren's words to find a reason so she could disregard them. Unexpectedly, just as Ren was about to answer, it was Hinata who spoke first. Not every clan is like the Hyagas where everybody awakens their bloodline limit. Even if the village captures a ninja with an active bloodline limit, there is no knowing if his or her kids would activate it too. What she said. Ren agreed. Not to mention, the kids that did activate their bloodline were most likely scooped up by Danzo and Naruto before anyone could notice. After all, the aforementioned fine establishment was owned by the Shimura clan, so he knew exactly which orphans to look out for. That said, Danzo's tools usually did not last long. Most of them did not last past his training, to be honest. Not that Ren would be telling the girls that. This and that were two very different things, and he didn't feel like explaining the whole situation about Root to them. Plus, Ren grimaced at the next part. You can't have the mother drugged up to her gills during the pregnancy if you want a healthy child. Genjutsu is primarily used, but I imagine the kunoichi do break out of them more often than not during the 9 months so. He helplessly shrugged. They know there is no help coming, so suicides are pretty common in these cases. With knowledge of chakra manipulation, suicide was easy. Just channeling enough chakra into their own heart in a wrong manner would rupture it. It's why kids are told not to practice with chakra without supervisors. And the unfortunate women who find themselves in that kind of position, they don't have any other way out so. Ren watched the girls like a hawk. He made them uncomfortable, but there was also a secondary reason why he decided to uncover this to them. They were kunoichi in training. He needed them to understand the possible danger of their chosen profession and take it seriously. If scaring them shitless like this would make them train more seriously, good for both him and them. This ninja business they were entering? It was no joke. This is just one example of the darkness within this village. Ren said in a bit louder voice in order to get the girls out of their funk. There are 3 types of ninja in Konoha. Fresh, naive, and wide-eyed genin, and some low-end shinin who are still happy-go-lucky. Yes, being a ninja sucks, but they still believe in their naive will of fire belief like the sheep they are. Ren teasingly smirked at the girls. You belong in this category as academy students with no experience. Hinata weakly smiled at Ren's attempt at humor, but Ino didn't find any joy in it, still reeling from the amount of crap Ren unloaded on her shoulders all at once. His cheeks slightly twitching, Ren continued, inwardly unhappy that his humor did not exactly work as he wanted. Then there are the majority of ninjas who are in it for a paycheck, and that's it. 2/3 of Konoha's forces are in this category, and the higher UPS know it. Both girls looked at Ren when he said that, their faces showing a bit of surprise in their own ways. But what are they going to do about it? Execute 2/3 of their forces? Bah, please. Ren snorted with an eye roll. No. They just give them less important positions and let them serve the Konoha in their own way. He shook his head. The last type is the core of the village. The die-hard loyalists. The elite. They know what atrocities the village does. They've been there and done that. But they have found a personal reason why they serve the village. Their will of fire burns brightly. And fuck the corpses they leave in their wake. It's all for the greater good of the village. Ren noticed his students were paying rapt attention and smiled. And those people? They rule this village. He gave them a meaningful look. But even among them, there are factions. The Hokage? He is a good guy, well, as much as the ruler of trained murder hobos can be. Ino involuntarily snorted at that, so Ren took it as a good sign. But there are worse people than him. Those who actually work in the shadows. Those who do the more distasteful ninja things. And believe me, if those people got even a whiff about me potentially having a teleportation jutsu, Ren grimaced, they would be on my ass like bloodhounds. Forgive me if I am not interested in that. So, you keep things from the village higher UPS. Ino muttered loudly enough for both Ren and Hinata to hear her. Yes. Can you accept that? Ren asked. The Yamanaka girl pursed her lips and tersely nodded, looking at the floor. I'd like to know more about this village's darkness. Ren took a deep breath and sighed when he heard her. He didn't exactly feel comfortable discussing such heavy topics with his students. Training them was much easier than this. But reluctantly, he agreed, promising to himself to also show the girls the good points about Konoha. To be frank, the people of Konoha were not bad. Ren did not hate the village. He made it sound so horrible, but it's like living under a government in Ren's previous life. Most people know their government is doing shady stuff, but as long as it does not affect their life, they simply live without thinking about it too much. That's pretty much how it went in Konoha too. For a ninja village, Konoha is not bad, girls. What I want to accomplish by telling you these things is to make you stop looking at the village with childish naivete. Serve the village to protect the people you love if you want, but do not do it blindly. Ren felt the need to properly explain himself. Find your resolve. He took the girls' hands and tightly squeezed them as he tried to look into their eyes. I want you to find a reason why you are embarking on this bloody path. A reason to be a ninja. Chapter 49, ch 49, Tough Luck. Hinata and Ino exited Ren's hospital room in a morose mood and silently walked through the village, gloom clinging to them like a fine coat. Only when the girls almost reached the entrance to the Yamanaka compound did Ino finally break the silence. What do you think, Hinata? She asked in an unusually subdued and unsure tone. Hinata quietly glanced at Ino, her lips quirking downward. Does it matter? She quietly asked, her eyes glinting with resolve. I will be strong, Ino. Strong enough that nobody will be able to disregard me. She truly believed there was no other option for her anyway. I will be a kunoichi. For Ren. And for myself. Unlike Ino, Hinata didn't think she needed to find her resolve. She already had it. The revelations about her village did shake her, but to be frank, she was able to shrug it off before they even left Ren's room. Her own family practiced slavery on their own blood. Hearing that the village was doing something scummy did not really surprise her as much as it probably should. Her speech, however, seemed to cheer Ino up, and the blonde suddenly forcefully shook her head before letting out a small frustrated yell. Fine. Don't think I'll be beaten so easily, bitch. I will become the strongest kunoichi of this village out of sheer spite if necessary. Just you wait. Ino huffed out a labored breath at the end of her proclamation, making Hinata roll her eyes. Bimbo, that's going to be me, she said in a matter-of-fact tone, causing both of them to stop and stare at each other. I liked you better when you were shy. Ino abruptly interrupted the silent staring contest after a few moments. And I liked you better when you didn't speak to me, Hinata retorted. The girls grinned at each other and Ino offered Hinata her fist for a friendly bump. May the best kunoichi win, Ino said with a grin, the mistake clearly intended. Don't worry, I will, Hinata said with a friendly smile, bumping her fist against Ino's before they separated. Back in his hospital room, Ren stopped focusing on a spy seal he had sneaked on Ino, letting it dissolve into chakra with a rueful chuckle. It was not exactly the unshakable resolve they would need to develop one day, but he could work with rivalry. For now, it was good enough. A few days passed and Ren was finally out of the hospital. Funnily enough, he got another paid leave out of it. For a second, his mind involuntarily thought that it almost made encountering Yagura worth it before he shook that thought off. Well, he wasn't going to complain. Less work and more time for his seal work was always appreciated, especially now that he has experienced combat against a Jinchuriki, which showed him he still lacked proper heavy-hitting options. And wasn't that a proper what the hell kind of revelation? His exploding seals would kill even Jonins once they hit. But apparently, Jinchuriki were a different breed and needed something with more oomph. All in due time, Ren Riley thought. He was currently sitting on the grass in Training Ground 41, leisurely leaning his back on a tree while mirthfully watching Hinata and Ino covered from head to toe in the mud. The blonde Yamanaka was almost frothing from her sheer anger, and even the usually reserved Hinata looked like she wanted to smash somebody's balls into a paste with her gentle fist. Needless to say, Ren was having a lot of fun. His massive smirk probably did not help the girl's mood, but that just made the situation funnier for him, so he openly laughed at them anyway. They just had to deal with it. Ren called it anger management training, but all three of them knew it was bullshit. They were learning the hiding like a mole technique, or well, trying and failing. Oh, Ren was sure Ino would get it by tomorrow. Not only was her nature earth, but she could also abuse her Yamanaka mind bullshit to somehow practice in her mindscape. She was definitely going to show up tomorrow, smug and preening like a peacock, but she will have the technique down the pat. So, Ren decided to enjoy this rare moment where the Yamanaka Ino abruptly slipped in her control of the technique and came back out of the ground covered in even more mud while loudly cursing at Ren, making him chuckle when some of the mud slipped into her mouth, causing her to gag. Tisk, tisk. Such a dirty mouth, Ino-chan, Ren called out with a shit-eating grin. He really couldn't resist. Hinata, on the other hand, just threw a furious glare at him before she focused back on the technique and slowly burrowed into the ground. Her approach was slower than Ino's, but she was making visible improvements with each attempt. Her Byakugan was helping her a lot to identify and correct what she was doing wrong. The principle was simple. Make the ground soft enough around their body to be able to move through it with their chakra. The application, though, the goal was to do that without getting dirty. That was a good measuring stick to ascertain if one had mastered the technique, but the girls were still a way off from that point. A bit further on the side, near the tree lean to Ren's right, were 4 shadow clones, 2 belonging to Ino and 2 to Hinata. They all sat cross-legged on the grass with a leaf in their hands and practiced the first step of elemental chakra training. Hinata focused on lightning, her natural affinity, while Ren had Ino try her hand at splitting the leaf with wind chakra. Since the blonde was going to be using a sword, the wind nature would be more beneficial for her than earth nature. It was a pity, but then again, with her mindscape training bullshit, she had a good shot at learning all chakra nature exercises one day as long as she didn't get lazy. Ren was really pushing them in their training. The kitty gloves were off. His students were good, but they could be better. And he would be damned if he didn't torture them into it. Honestly, if any Jonin knew what he was teaching the girls, they would be exasperated. The two of them were not even proper genin yet, and Ren was teaching them stuff even some experienced genin hadn't learned. But the fight with Yagura kinda spooked him enough to kick his ass into gear. The girls were graduating from the academy at 16. Ren didn't think that wanting them to be solid Jonin level competence by that time was too much. The kiddies in the anime managed it with half the effort, and Ren was not going to be beaten by an animated show. No matter how much suffering his cute little minions had to go through to reach that level. It was all for the greater good, and therefore justice was on his side. Plus ultra. Somebody might question his intelligence because he used his chakra to help the girls form 4 shadow clones through the cooperation method, sacrificing his own training time and resources for them. Someone might even call him stupid for giving them access to his important seals like the gravity ones or teaching Hinata his exploding seals. Ren smiled as he remembered Hinata squealing and jumping up and down in glee like a little girl when she finally managed to apply her first explosive seal on a tree trunk just yesterday during their training. It was adorable and he liked seeing her so happy. To be honest, Ren put considerable time into thinking about his decisions when it came to teaching. It wasn't an easy decision to share his work. He put in tens, if not hundreds, of hours into designing his seals. Giving his students access to them was not done on a whim. When he first unwillingly gained Hinata as a student, he spent hours agonizing over how seriously he should train her. He could have easily just made her good enough to graduate academy with good marks. It wouldn't even take him 2 hours of half-assed effort 3 days a week to accomplish that. But being selfish would hurt him in the long term. He needed a team. People he could trust. People he could count on during the war. And the best way to get them was to raise them himself. He was embracing the grooming culture, baby. Jokes aside, due to chakra, Hinata and Ino are also mentally much more mature than he was at 18 in his previous life. At that point, it's called courting, instead of grooming. Or at least, that's what Ren heard from that one perverted friend on the intern. Probably not the best dude to ask for advice. But when it came to the girls' ninjutsu skills, Ren was going to go all groom master on them, zero democracy included. His Pokemon Dash, he meant to say that his future teammates would be trained to be great. There was just no other way for him than to raise his own teammates since he didn't have a genin team, and as much as Konoha liked to brag that they were the greatest due to their teamwork, it was really hard to find a reliable and capable long-term team for the common ninjas who were not from the elite course, and therefore blessed with Jonin instructor who literally manipulated the kiddies to become the bestest friends possible, Will of Fire style. Yes, he could have befriended Sasuke and Naruto, but Ren didn't really want to end up in the same position as Sakura. After all, it wasn't certain that he could ever reach their eventual level. He hoped so, and he was going to give it his all. But sadly, it was easier said than done. He didn't have a super sage sugar daddy willing to throw unearned and unreasonable power UPS his way every time he was about to lose. Neither did he have red eyes that seemed to get more and more ridiculous with every evolution as if they were purposefully designed for a main character that just wasn't supposed to lose. Nor did he have an angry fox demon in his gut that translated to an infinite energy hack and who would pull his ass out of danger by turning him into an Orange Hulk wannabe whenever he was about to lose a fight. That getting to their level thingy? Ren was still kinda at the drawing board when it came to having a solid idea of how to accomplish it. That's where Ino and Hinata came in. They were going to be strong. They had their own advantages that would allow them to become S-rank in the future. And training them kinda took care of developing a good relationship with them. With how strong they would be upon graduation, Ren doubted their genin teams would last past the Chunin exam. There will be too much of a gap in skill and power to allow for good teamwork. Alas, sacrifices had to be made. All according to the plan. Once the girls are Chunin, they can stay on their genin team, but they are also completely free to leave and form their own team with other ninjas from the village. How convenient, right? Having good teammates who could keep up with him was invaluable in this world. Trying to do everything alone was just not going to work. Ren wasn't arrogant enough to think he could solo Narutoverse, especially not when the 4th ninja war erupted. Even if he and both girls get to the S-rank level, surviving would still be hard, even as a team. Properly teaching Hinata and Ino was an investment for the future. One he dearly hoped would pan out because he really wanted teammates who could last a bit longer than 3 seconds when his team inevitably found itself on the wrong end of Jinchuriki's wrath the next time. That was pretty much his evil master plan for surviving the future. Underwhelming? Lame? Not good enough? Well, tough luck. It was the best he got. Sadly, he didn't get an overpowered golden finger that would allow him to one-hit KO Kaguya, so yeah, it sucked. He tried not to think too much about it because it would just make him depressed. No wonder his clones were all so nihilistic. Already thinking about your next read? Hit like and keep exploring Infinite Novel. Chapter 50, ch 50. A little test woohoo. Teacher. Hinata had defeated Suzuki-kun during sparring matches today. Ino instantly glomped Ren when she came to the training grounds with Hinata, smugly bragging as if the achievement was hers, and Ren raised his eyebrow at the Hyaga girl, causing her to shrug in embarrassment. Looking down at the blonde who was still holding onto him, a teasing smirk appeared on his face. Oh, really now? Shouldn't you be sad that your Suzuki-kun got bested? He enjoyed the brief scowl his words elicited from the girl. But it didn't last long before Ino released her hold on Ren and took a step back, a mischievous grin replacing her earlier scowl. Well, of course, I am mad. But I am also happy for the bitch. She animatedly spoke, wildly gesturing with her arms with an earnest expression as if she hadn't just casually insulted Hinata. Right, Ren dryly said, completely seeing through her fake expression because she did not put much effort into trying to appear genuine in the first place. Hinata, who stood a bit to the side, just rolled her eyes. Ino, being her dramatic self, was nothing new. She had to go to school with her. This was just another day for her. But yeah, Ino seriously nodded, her tone attaining a small reproachful undertone. Hinata screwed up and showed more than she should have. She briefly glanced at her fellow student as a peculiar glint passed through her blue eyes and a smug smirk appeared on her face. Of course, that would never happen to me. Hinata snorted, that would never happen to you because you genuinely suck at close combat unless you have a blade in hand, you maniac. She dryly said as she plucked a leaf from the nearby tree and started training the first elemental exercise for the lightning chakra. Ren chuckled. Much like him, Ino was not building herself to be a punch wizard. Instead, she was going to be a hack-and-slash-wizard, and as such, she suffered from the common affliction of neglecting her punching skills. But it wasn't as bleak as Hinata was making it out to be. Ino was good for her age. Better than most genin. But compared to the girl from the Taijutsu Specialist clan? Yeah, she was nothing to write home about. So, how did you beat Suzuki? Ren asked Hinata curiously. Sure, he knew she could do it. The physical training he was putting the girls through was no joke, but he was under the impression the girls acknowledged the need to not show off. So, as much as he was proud, he couldn't say he was going to congratulate her. And the girl knew it. He just tripped. Hinata flushed and awkwardly replied while averting her eyes away from Ren as he raised his eyebrow at her. Hinata tried to play her accomplishment off but Ino was not having it. She exaggeratedly rolled her eyes and snarkily interceded, Mizuki might not have noticed but I am pretty sure Irika saw that Suzuki's tripping was not a coincidence. And Suzuki definitely noticed too. He is smart like that. She dreamily sighed, but both Ino and Ren caught that there was no passion in her actions. She was just going through the motions and playing the part of an infatuated schoolgirl. Ren blinked at her and tilted his head in curiosity, wondering if he had missed some development concerning his yellow student. But almost as fast as the thought appeared in his mind, he shook it off, focusing on the more important things. Her love life was no concern for him. Should I expect the broody Avenger to come and bother me about training, then? He asked Ino who, funnily enough, seemed to know more about the whole situation despite being a bystander than Hinata who was an active participant. Nah. Ino shook her head with a huff. Suzuki-kun still thinks Hinata is training with somebody from her clan. He lost in Taijutsu against a Hyuga girl. He isn't going to make an issue out of it. The only one he is going to bother will be Hinata. He is definitely going to want a rematch or invite her to train with him, though. She narrated, showing that she could be extremely observant when she wanted to be. It is just a pity she does not make use of this talent of hers for things that matter. Ren Riley thought, his mind instantly trying to figure out how to correct the issue through a possibly traumatizing but very memorable training exercise. Honestly, he didn't believe that Suzuki was some arrogant, self-centered, and spoiled caricature like he was presented in most fanfictions during Ren's past life. But having him come and ask for training would still be pretty inconvenient for Ren. Too many eyes were on the last Uchiha. Too many feathers would be ruffled if Ren trained him. It would just be far too troublesome. So, he was glad that he didn't need to deal with that political ticking time bomb just yet. But the Uchiha boy was clearly starting to catch on. Sooner or later, he was going to figure it out and Ren was going to need to decide what to do with him. Joy, Hinata said in an extremely dry tone when she heard that the Uchiha boy was most likely going to pester her. But Ino completely ignored her tone and angrily stomped on the ground. I know. The blonde exclaimed, it sucks. Why you? You look so plain. Ren inwardly snorted. Ino was being a dick for fun. But since they came here to train, he decided to cut her fun short. This was enough pre-training banter to keep the girls' competition going. I think she is very pretty actually, he said, countering Ino's point and throwing her off her game while making Hinata happily grin, only for him to get poked in the stomach by the blonde. You don't get a vote, she flatly said, all the early amusement drained from her expression as her left eye twitched in a barely restrained annoyance. Ren inwardly rolled his eyes. Right. What else did he expect? Democracy was not even a concept in this world. Lazily catching Ino's wrist before she could pull her hand back, Ren casually shrugged, enough talking, Ino. Wind claws. Now. He dragged her hand up and in front of his face, just as the disgruntled blonde channeled wind chakra into her freaking nails of all things without actually shredding her fingers into ribbons. Ren furrowed his eyebrows as he observed her hand infused with wind chakra and slowly nodded. It's stable and you are not hurting yourself. Okay. I'd say this is well done, Ino. He gave the blonde a proud smile, causing her to genuinely but shyly smile in return before she caught herself and her lips set themselves in a self-assured cocky smirk. This much is only natural, she boasted, lifting her nose up, only for Ren to flick it with his free hand, making the blonde girl yelp. It has been an entire week since he was released from the hospital and started teaching the girls again. Their first challenge was to learn 3 techniques. Earth nature, hiding like a mole. Lightning nature, zap. And water nature, water stream. Only the first one was actually useful in combat. The other 2, well, zap could be used to stun people at best but it only worked at close range, and experienced ninjas could mitigate its effects with their chakra. However, the principles in that D-rank technique were used in many other higher-ranked lightning techniques so it was a great entry technique for the lightning affinity jutsu. As for the water nature, water stream, taking shit during missions is a pain in the ass. It was also a D-rank technique but it had exactly 0 combat potential. It could be used to manipulate water enough to give yourself a bath or to use the water to clean your ass after taking a dump. The technique generated a moderately slow stream of water and that was it. Honestly, the worst part about missions was actually the camping in the wilderness experience. There were no convenient camping jutsu that took care of every little problem like many Narutoverse fics portrayed. The anime did not show how rough ninjas had it on missions. It showed the cool parts, the amazing fighting, the motivational talk no jutsu, the sad tragic backstories of characters. But ninjas having to hunt for food, use leaves to wipe their asses, and sleep only a few hours because watch duty was a thing? No, sir. That wasn't shown very well. Ren did have a seal that literally took his waste and piss from within his body and sealed it into a storage seal he had tattooed on his waist. He created it post-haste after his first taste of a camping experience during a mission. He was not a fan. And it took several bandits dying a very excruciating death as they screamed bloody murder while he was trying to figure out how to ensure the storage seal would not turn his innards inside out while sealing his shit. But Sugar Daddy Sage, was their suffering worth it? Of course, he was not going to give this particular seal to the girls. Not yet. Not until they have their own miserable experience with long ninja missions in the wilderness. They first needed to suffer to have a proper appreciation for something as simple as a seal that removed their need to take a shit. But back to the water stream technique. Despite being able to create only a slow stream of water, it was still a very convenient thing for wilderness survival. Unfortunately, the generated water could not be used for drinking. It was a thing with all water techniques. There is a reason why Suna was suffering from the lack of drinking water and had to spend an ungodly amount of money to constantly import it despite being a ninja village. Sure, they were in the desert but they still had people with water affinity. Alas, the water techniques did not create drinking water. The created water lacked the necessary minerals, vitamins, and who knows what else drinking water usually contains. Drinking it was pretty much like drinking distilled water. Sure, you can do it and your thirst will be quenched but your body does not get the necessary stuff from it so you'd eventually die of thirst despite constantly drinking said water. Alas, not all problems can be solved by ninjutsu. That said, the reason why Ren had the girls learn these three techniques was not just that they were useful or good for entry-level ninjutsu of their respective elements. It was a test. Ino passed. Hinata flunked. Ino learned all three techniques within 3 days. And then she moved on to learning how to coat wind-natured chakra onto her blade and learned that. And then, she also figured out how to coat her freaking fingernails in wind-natured chakra, creating her self-made jutsu, the wind claws. All within said week. Honestly? The girl was just cheating when it came to learning ninjutsu. She might act like a smug cocky little shit that liked to boast and irritate others with her words, but the girl was putting more effort into training than freaking Naruto, shadow clones included. It was easy to just say, oh, she has her mindscape training bullshit. And yes, she does. But the girl actually had to train in all these techniques. She had to spend hundreds of hours in her mindscape grinding until she learned them and then she went plus ultra with her grinding and created her own version of wind-natured chakra coating. And she couldn't use shadow clones in her mindscape to game the system. Ren had her try it. But it just did not work that way so she had to do everything by herself. Ren respected her for it. The amount of work she was putting into it was quite frankly humbling. That didn't change anything on the fact that her accomplishments were plain bullshit. There was a reason why people coated their swords or kunao with wind chakra and not parts of their bodies. Wind chakra was known to damage swords or kunao if used too frequently or if the weapon was of inferior quality. A ninja needed perfect control of his wind chakra to prevent this. Coating a body part in wind chakra was a good way to get some nasty cuts. But Ino managed it without getting hurt and Ren decided it would be better for her development to not inform her how much bullshit she was currently doing. The amount of control she had to attain for that to be possible was quite mind-boggling. One mistake and there would go her fingers. The first time Ino showed her wind claws to Ren, he totally freaked out from sheer fear that she was going to accidentally cut off her fingers during training. The fact that the time in her mindscape passed faster than in the real world was a massive help during her training. She also wasn't limited by her chakra reserves, for some reason. But hacks were pretty common in this universe so Ren decided it was pointless to complain. At least, the cheater was somebody on his team right now. Any injury she sustained could be instantly reversed too with just a thought and Ino did admit to Ren that she lost thousands of fingers when she trained her wind-natured coating for her fingernails. She only tried it in the real world when she was damn certain she had it down the pat. But she still had to train that singular skill for hundreds of hours to get to this level with it. And the most ridiculous part? The blonde girl was not yet satisfied. Her aim was to infuse the wind chakra into individual strands of her hair. She was completely batshit insane. Even the slightest fluctuation of wind chakra would just cut the strand of hair into pieces. The control of wind-natured chakra necessary to accomplish her goal was nothing short of complete perfection. And then she would need to multitask on a massive scale to imbue multiple strands of hair with wind-natured chakra at the same time while keeping them intact. Nobody ever accomplished that, but Ino was a blonde. And this was Narutoverse. She was dumb enough to try and cheat like training hacks alongside having no idea it was supposed to be impossible so she had a fair shot at actually accomplishing it. Ren was not going to question it. It's just how things work in this world. Just look at Naruto, the dumb blonde number 2. He let her go for it. It was something that was going to occupy her time for the next several months and even if she failed to accomplish it, she would still learn a lot about wind-natured chakra in the process. So, why not? But if she accomplished and perfected it? It was the kind of technique that could form her very own S-class gimmick if paired with the hair technique she was already insanely proficient in. As for Hinata, she did learn the 3 techniques. And she only took 6 days too. Her learning speed was astounding compared to other ninjas. But she still flunked Ren's little test. She wasn't a ninjutsu specialist material. As Ren looked at the Hyaga girl practicing the first level exercises of lightning chakra nature, he inwardly winced. He needed to have a talk about it with her today and he was really not looking forward to it. He knew he should not have ranted to her about how Byakugan was the best tool to learn ninjutsu. Now, it was going to bite him in the ass. But if she wanted to keep pace with Ino, who turned out to be an insanely hard-working prodigy at ninjutsu, then Hinata had to find her own niche. And ninjutsu just wasn't it. Chapter 51, ch 51, Unexpected Discovery. Okay, girls, come here and let's create the shadow clones for your training. Ren said and helped Ino create 2 shadow clones first because she was closer to him before he did the same for Hinata before the girls went on to practice their own stuff. He first created the cooperation shadow clone technique to bypass the lower reserves the girls had. But in the previous week, he noticed something unexpected about it. When people mention shadow clones, the first thing that comes to their mind is the yin aspect of the technique, the memory transfer. The girls supply the yin chakra, so they get the experience and memories. But when a clone popped, it was not just the yin chakra that returned. The yang chakra returned too, and Ren supplied the yang part of the technique. To be frank, even Ren did not think about this when he created the technique. But, over the course of the last week where he helped the girls make clones every day, he noticed that his chakra grew a tiny bit stronger and denser despite him not actively training for it. He delved into this mystery, and after some deep pondering, he realized that the yin chakra of the girls and the yang chakra of his within the shadow clones had a peculiar interaction within a clone during its existence. Ren had just figured out how to dual cultivate. Yeah, he almost wanted to drop dead from sheer shame. Basically, because the yin and yang chakras in the clone came from different sources, they were reacting and affecting, constantly pushing against each other even though it was not visible in the appearance of the finalized technique. Somehow, that translated to refining each other in a very, very, very minuscule amount. Don't ask him how. He had no freaking idea. It just worked. He named this clone chakra refinement. The gains were frankly so small that Ren almost did not notice. Only after 6 days did he find it strange that his chakra reserves slightly increased in their density, and even that was because he was not actively training during this period of time. If he had trained, he would have never realized this gimmick of his shadow clone co-op technique. As for the reason why he called it dual cultivation, Ren's cheeks involuntarily flushed and he tried to push his sudden embarrassment down. He made some theories and even derived a training exercise based on this discovery, naming it yin-yang circling. Not the most inspired name, but it aptly described what the training exercise did. A male and a female would sit opposite each other and hold their hands while the man circled his yang chakra through the woman and the woman circled her yin chakra through the man. The difficult part was that it also required the user to be able to create pure yang or pure yin chakra while also having another person capable of creating the opposite element for it to work. And 99% of ninjas never bothered to learn yin or yang release. These were exceedingly rare because ninjas focused heavily on elemental chakra instead. The chances of a male and a female who were skilled enough to know how to use yang and yin release meeting each other were almost non-existent. The chances of them doing this kind of thing for shit and giggles, just to try if it did something? It was as close to zero as it could be. Ren was not surprised nobody figured this chakra interaction thingy out in the 1,000 years ninjas existed. Even he stumbled upon it by a complete coincidence. Fortunately, Ino knew how to generate yin chakra due to her clan training and she helped Hinata with learning it for the co-op shadow clones while Ren figured out how to do the yang part while creating said technique. During the yin-yang circling, the woman's yin chakra refined the man's yang chakra, but it also fed into his yin chakra, boosting both. And the same happened for the female, just the energies were reversed. The energy interaction was indirect within the shadow clone, so it was much weaker than yin-yang circling, which was several times more efficient. Ren would say it was 10 to 20 times better, but he didn't have an exact number. On the other hand, clones could do it passively but only for one energy. The person providing yin would get refined yin in return while the person providing yang would get refined yang in return. The gains were much smaller. Of course, the clone chakra refinement was basically providing a passive increase of either yin or yang while one of the users could also use the clones for training, so it's not as if it did not have its uses. The increase in chakra, no matter how much smaller it was just a very welcome unintended side effect. Not to mention, a person could create multiple clones, and Ren's inner gamer was already giddy at the prospect of crunching the numbers and min-maxing the shit out of it. It's just that, well, you see. Ren noticed that this energy interaction between yin and yang chakras would work best if the male and female were connected more closely. Yes, he was speaking about that kind of connection, plug A into socket B kind of stuff. It wasn't much. Really, just around a 100-fold increase? Oh, sweet sage and his perverted chakra shenanigans. Ren felt so freaking embarrassed. He was never going to show that to the girls. He had the notebook with his research locked behind a seal deep in his work desk at his apartment, and that's where it shall stay. What would his students think of him if they saw that kind of research? He felt like some sort of creep. He didn't even want to discover that tidbit. But once he started pondering about the way the yin and yang chakra interacted, it just made sense. For the best gains, the practitioners needed to have sex while circling their yin and yang chakras. It increased chakra efficiency and ensured there would be as little chakra loss during the technique. And 100-fold increase in efficiency? His inner gamer was screaming at Ren that he was a complete moron for not bending Hinata or Ino over the desk yet, but cooler, upper heads prevailed. He was their amazing teacher. How could he even show them that technique? No, He was going to use the yin-yang circling with the girls, the version where they sat opposite each other and held hands, and take the smaller gains without coming off as a creep who wanted to have sex with them for power gains. Hopefully, they will never find out about the dual cultivation aspect of that exercise, and he totally just raised a flag, didn't he? No, let's not even think about it. Ren shook his head with a wry smile while his eyes lingered on Hinata's form for a moment too long and he involuntarily gulped. But then he noticed how her cheeks colored deep red out of a sudden, making him olishly blink, and flushed from mortification when he realized that a certain lower part of his was rising, and she had her Byakugan on. Fuck me, Ren muttered very quietly under his nose in utter embarrassment, only for Hinata to blush even deeper as she glanced at him despite her Byakugan being activated, her entire face completely red. Ren's eyes met Hinata's, when his mind supplied that Hyagas were masters at lip reading. God, this is embarrassing. Ren put his head in his hands with a long whine full of suffering. His image as a cool teacher was just ruined, wasn't it? And his dick wasn't getting any softer no matter how much he wished it did. Nor was Hinata's Byakugan getting deactivated for that matter. From the corner of his eyes, he noticed Ino staring at them with a wide, cheeky, knowing grin and Ren decided that today just wasn't his day. He needed some training in becoming more shameless. Chapter 52 ch 52. The First. After 20 minutes of soul-crushing mortification, Ren calmed down enough to be capable of looking at Hinata again without feeling an overpowering need to divert his gaze. Still with pink dusting covering his cheeks, but fully committed to ignoring that fact, Ren motioned Hinata over. He didn't feel very enthusiastic about the upcoming discussion, but it was better to get it over with rather than put it off. Ino wouldn't be slowing down in her training anytime soon, and if Hinata wanted to keep her lead or even just keep up with the blonde, there were certain revelations she needed to know and decisions she had to make. Hinata approached Ren until she stood opposite him. They awkwardly looked at each other in silence for a few seconds, but then Ren suddenly regained his wits and wryly smiled. "Wanna talk about it?" he asked, deciding he should at least try to clean the air before they start talking about the serious stuff. Hinata shuffled a bit in her place while subconsciously brushing a few strands of her hair behind her ear while her eyes roamed around as if she were not sure what would be the safe place to look at. "I'd rather not discuss your erection, sensei," she timidly said. Hearing her, Ren's expression twitched. "That's not what I meant," he exasperatedly retorted in an almost whiny tone. "Oh," Hinata's eyes widened, causing her to look like a deer in headlights. She had no idea what to say. She had clearly misunderstood, so, due to her embarrassment, her mouth said the very first thing that came to her mind when she thought about salvaging the situation, "You have a nice penis?" And she instantly regretted it the second these words left her lips. For the first time in months, Hinata felt so embarrassed that she was on the verge of fainting. "Why, thank you. I try," Ren flatly responded before sighing. Let's put this incident behind us, alright?" Hinata meekly nodded, ducking her head, but a small smile appeared on her face, and despite blushing enough that Ren was surprised there was no steam coming out of her head, Hinata quietly but cheekily replied, "No promises," while her eyes flickered toward Ren's crotch just for the briefest of moments. Realizing the girl was awkwardly trying to tease him, Ren chuckled and the tension between them melted away as they both finally relaxed. "Let's get to talking about your training, shall we?" Ren sat down on the grass and beckoned Hinata to follow him. She nodded in agreement, and when they were both seated, Ren decided to rip the band-aid right off. Looking Hinata straight in the eyes, he tried to convey how serious he was. "I don't think you are suited for ninjutsu." He expected an angry reaction from the girl, but he should have known better. Hinata was always a calm person. She only tilted her head, and the only indication of her displeasure was her eyebrows almost knitted together as she frowned. "Didn't you always tell me that the Hyaga clan is stupid for not focusing on ninjutsu, though? At least 3 times a week? Something about our eyes making us a natural cheat at learning and perfecting it?" she asked in a deceptively calm voice, but Ren realized he misjudged her. She wasn't showing it, but she was definitely not very happy hearing that. Inwardly wincing, Ren outwardly just casually shrugged, "And I stand by it. But the question is if you want to keep up with Ino or your aim is to be a regular Joe dash dot." Before Ren was even done speaking, Hinata exclaimed in an affronted voice, "Of course. I can't let the bimbo win." Her expression screaming, "Duh, isn't it obvious?" Ren chuffed, but it soon enough turned into a sigh. He knew what he had to say next would not be received well. Hell, he had a hard time believing he was going to say it. And yet, here they were. "I feel like an idiot saying this, but taijutsu is going to be your thing." "Taijutsu?" Hinata flatly asked, the barest touch of disbelief coloring her tone. Her face became completely unreadably blank, and Ren was just glad that if nothing else, her clan training instilled a great emotional control in the girl, because when she started emulating her father, it was obvious the shit hit the fan. He was just glad there was no rock near her, because she would have most likely hurled it at him by now. And it would have been deserved too. For months he told her that focusing solely on taijutsu was stupid, and the girl was taking it to heart. He always told her that Hyagas were supremely retarded, that focusing on taijutsu held her clan back from becoming truly special. Yet, now he was recommending her to do exactly that. Knowing he needed to do damage control fast, Ren spoke. "Look, Hinata." He pointed toward where Ino was practicing, and Hinata, with great reluctance, turned her head there. Ino stood on the other side of the clearing, holding a thin tree branch of all things. She was swinging it at a tree trunk, creating large gashes into it because of the wind chakra coating on the branch. Ren loudly whistled, and Ino's focus on her wind chakra abruptly broke mid-swing. causing the tree branch to be cut into several pieces. Ino was unbalanced and stumbled forward, her arms flailing around as she almost fell onto the ground. When she stabilized herself, she threw Ren a heated glare before huffing and picking up another thin tree branch from a pile she had near her feet, intent on continuing her training with an admirable single-minded determination. Seeing the blonde fumble, Hinata let out a small involuntary giggle before she could stop herself. Ren smiled. Ino is simply too good at learning ninjutsu thanks to her mind trick, he told Hinata. But she is stubbornly pursuing perfection. It will take her months, if not years, to get where she wants to be with wind chakra alone. And to be perfectly honest, Ren approved of her approach. Was it stupid? Undoubtedly. If she went the Hiruzen route and mastered all chakra natures, she could be at least an elite Jonin-level kunoichi by the time she left the academy, with good prospects at breaching that low-end S rank soon. But she wanted to get her wind chakra far beyond what was considered mastery by ninjas. And if she managed it? It was the kind of trick that had the potential to create one of the strongest S-rank ninjas. The keywords, however, are if she managed it. What she was trying to do was considered impossible. But well, she was a blonde. So, Ren had faith in her ability to bullshit the world. You are never going to keep up with her if you try matching her in her specialty, Ren said to Hinata with a wry smile. It wasn't just Hinata who had to accept this fact. He was a ninja too and had the realization that once Ino got a few more months of ninjutsu training under her belt, he would not be able to keep up with her in that discipline. It was discouraging, but he decided to buckle up and redouble his focus on fuinjutsu, because that was his specialty, and he would be damned if he let some Yamanaka brat overtake him in strength. Oh, she would have been just insufferable if that happened. The best advice I can give you, Hinata, is that you need to focus on your own advantages, he said, and decided to elaborate when he saw her unsure expression. You finished that modified chitin of yours, right? How long did it take for you to develop? I mean, how many hours of continuous effort? Around 10, I guess? She seemed uncertain, but Ren knew she only gave that technique in between nothing at all to at most 2 hours every Saturday, so counting how many hours that added up to over the months was probably not easy. And I named it Heavenly Wall, the girl whispered with a beautiful smile, her voice containing a slight undertone of pride at her achievement. Ren reached out and took her hand, squeezing it in acknowledgement with a smile. Her heavenly wall was just chitin without the need to spin. It sounded simple, but it was anything but, because the spin was an integral part of the technique. Discarding the need to spin made the technique disgustingly chakra efficient, effective in literally any situation, and capable of being used in a split second at any time the user needed. Hinata could call forth a wall of spinning chakra out of the tenketsu in her body to block or reflect jutsu on demand. She could also use it offensively, just like the regular chitin. And since she didn't need to spin, she didn't need to stop in a place to use it. It had a massive offensive potential. But Ren knew that Hinata did not realize that just yet. On top of that, with no spinning required, she didn't need to keep the technique up for a long period, making her expend way less chakra in the process than what the regular chitin needed. The only downside was that it was one of those disgustingly skill-reliant techniques. The first step in learning it was to master Reizanon, so, yeah, good luck with that, Ren guessed. There go a few months, if not years, of your life, and that's just the first step. No regular ninja was ever going to put that much time investment into it, because it is more effective for them to learn several lower-level techniques that they can use in the field to save their lives in a pinch, no matter how overpowered the technique is. Hell, Ren was not going to learn it, and he already knew Reizanon. It just wasn't a cost-effective use of his time. The sweet girl did not realize it because it came sickeningly easy to her. She didn't even think it was that hard. Ren wanted to bash his head on a tree whenever he thought about it, and she created it from the regular chitin technique in 10 hours of effort. It was fucking bullshit. Her mind simply worked in mysterious ways that Ren had a hard time comprehending, but she was a female, so that was pretty much given. Honestly, if he didn't think that Hinata had an actual chance to compete with Ino, he would have simply told her that. But the most ridiculous thing about the whole situation was that in his opinion as their teacher, Hinata could do it. She was talented enough. He just needed her to believe in herself and get the correct mindset. No matter what your clan says, you have an amazing talent for taijutsu. You already created your own move in such a short time, and you are not even out of the academy yet. Plus, you are getting very good at medical ninjutsu on your own. You should lean into these specialties more, Ren said. Not to mention Byakugan was truly a cheat when it came to the medical ninjutsu. It was practically the difference between a blind person learning the stuff by touch and a person who could actually see what they were doing learning it. It doesn't take a genius to realize which one would learn things faster. Despite Ren's words, Hinata still seemed to lack confidence. She saw the difference between Ino and herself when it came to ninjutsu, and Ren knew it felt like a shit to have that realization. But her woe-is-me attitude was frankly starting to piss him off a bit. But will that be enough? Hinata timidly asked, and Ren had to take a deep breath. Why don't you use your Byakugan to observe the Akimichi clan and try to learn how they use the Yang chakra? He exasperatedly asked, saying aloud the first thing that came to his mind, and gave the girl a big eye roll. He could only generate Yang chakra. He couldn't do anything else with it just yet. He couldn't teach the girl how to properly utilize it in combat, and he was already helping her aplenty by providing chakra for shadow clones. He refused to baby her so much as to spend weeks of his time developing proper Yang chakra techniques just so Hinata could use them in combat. No, the girl would have to make these techniques herself. Ren was too busy making new seals in his spare time. He loved his students and put in an enormous effort to help them in their development, but he had his own development to think about too. You want me to steal their clan techniques? Hinata's whole demeanor abruptly shifted as she asked with eyes wide in horror, as if Ren was casually suggesting treason. Not really, he shrugged. You want a quick way to get stronger? Learn the principles behind how they use the Yang chakra and then use them alongside your medical expertise to create your own technique to, I don't know, strengthen your body perhaps? Preferably without turning yourself into a giantess or using your fat stores because that would have been just too obvious. Ren rubbed the bridge of his nose, inwardly regretting that he started this topic. But he was a bit frustrated. Ino was confident, bordering on arrogance. And that attitude had its flaws. But she always believed in herself. She didn't expect him to hold her hand through her training and she actively tried new things. Hinata, however, was a more timid person so she needed that push to get her confidence and so far, she wasn't very proactive. Even the learning of chitin was something Ren suggested to her ages ago. And yes, she did modify it on her own but it wasn't enough. Hinata was going to fall behind Ino if she didn't get out of her comfort zone. The girl needed to start experimenting. Not to mention, seeing Ino's talent had shaken Hinata's belief in her own progress, which made her less inclined to be creative with her training. It was honestly quite a bothersome situation for Ren. Alas, since he had started the topic already, he decided to just unload his thoughts on the girl while hoping for the best. Seriously, you Hyuga have the best tool for spying and observation and you live in a village full of talented ninjas. How your clan has not raised an S-rank ninja so far is a complete mystery. You could learn so many secret techniques and observe how they work with none the wiser and you don't even need to leave your house for it. It's not as if somebody could tell where you are looking if you just sit in your room with your eyes closed and your Byakugan activated. Do you want to keep up with Ino? I can't give you every answer. I can't lead you there by your hand, Hinata. I can and will help you but certain things you will have to accomplish by yourself. Ren told Hinata, giving her the hard truth. For a few seconds, they just sat on the grass, silently looking at each other. Hinata was deep in thought while Ren observed her, wondering what she would decide. Eventually, Hinata slowly nodded her head. I understand. And that was that. He was not going to give her more advice on this topic and he knew she was smart enough to not get caught. The rest was on her. She was a kunoichi in training, duh. Ren reciprocated the nod. He was not sure she truly understood but, only the future would tell. Now, I think you should only focus on the lightning element when it comes to ninjutsu. It will be a great addition to boost your taijutsu or even your medical ninjutsu if used creatively enough. He didn't even want to start thinking what a skilled lightning nature user could do with nerves once he or she became a top-tier medic. Ren firmly believed that Cruciatus should stay in Potterverse but, for his adorable student, he was willing to make an exception and eventually lead her to certain conclusions. But for now, Hinata knew only one thing to do with her lightning element, show me your lightning-coated exploding senbon. Ren calmly commanded. Hinata nodded and stood up. She took out a senbon out of the seal on her wrist with a puff of smoke, imbued lightning chakra into it within 3 seconds, and then applied the exploding seal in the next 2 seconds before throwing the needle at a nearby tree trunk at barely traceable speeds thanks to the lightning chakra coating the senbon. The senbon sank into the tree before it exploded with a loud bang, and the tree trunk, sporting a massive hole around the place where the senbon impacted it, toppled over while heavily creaking. Hinata expectantly looked at Ren but sadly, she was not going to get the desired praise. Not for this. It needs work, Ren said with a grimace. 5 seconds to imbue lightning chakra and inscribe the exploding seal on the senbon was too long. The entire thing should last less than 1 second. She should be able to throw one exploding lightning senbon every second. Only then was it going to be combat ready. Well, all in due time, Ren guessed. Hinata's face fell as she dejectedly mumbled, I'll just go practice. But Ren stopped her by placing his hand on her shoulder when she was about to leave. You can do it, Hinata. You are one of the most talented kunoichi in this village. Just believe in yourself. I believe in you, he said, and something in his expression probably conveyed his sincerity because Hinata teared up and sniffed. She nodded with determination written in her eyes before she turned around and was about to walk away only to stop in her tracks. She turned her upper body around and took a long unsure glance at Ren, causing him to raise his eyebrow at her. Yes? He asked, but the Hyuga girl only chewed on her lower lip in an apparent indecision. Then, out of nowhere, she seemed to make a decision and walked back toward Ren, who curiously looked at her, wondering what she was doing, only to be surprised when she quickly closed the distance between them, raised herself to her toes, and delivered a short peck on his lips. Ren stared at her, completely bewildered, his lips slightly parted, while she looked like a frightened rabbit, her face red from embarrassment. Thank you, she whispered with a blush. Before Ren could regather his wits, Hinata abruptly turned on her heel and jerkily walked away with her head ducked low, steam almost rising from her head. Ren could only watch her before his mind rebooted. That happened, huh? He wryly thought, a small embarrassed smile appearing on his face as he touched his lips. Author note, I am sorry for everybody who dislikes the MC X Hinata pairing, but this was a long time coming. Also, don't worry, I did not forget about our boy Naruto. He will not be left alone. I do have dastardly plans aimed at his virginity, Kukyaku. Chapter 53, ch 53, Academy Days 2. Ino Yamanaka sat in the academy, watching her classmates during a break, bored out of her mind. Her teacher, Ren, took a week off from training her in Hinata because of some personal pet project while Hinata decided to fake being sick so she could focus more on training rather than sit in the academy and lectures about things she either didn't care about or already knew. Ino sighed in exasperation. She would love to have the perks of being a medical ninja, but when she saw the small mountain of books she would have needed to read, she shivered. Yeah, no, thank you very much. That's for nerds. Sadly for Ino, she didn't have any other convenient power that allowed her to skip school, so she had to be here or face her parents' displeasure. No matter how boring the academy was, nothing was worth the disappointed hours-long lecture she would have gotten from her parents for skipping. It was not as if she could just mind control them, was it? But of course, what she could do is make her own entertainment. Seeing one of her non-clan classmates timidly approach a brown-haired girl while slightly shaking as if he was going to his own execution, Ino inwardly chuckled. She knew that this particular classmate of hers had a puppy crush on the girl for some time, and it seemed he finally gathered the courage to confess. Unfortunately for the boy, the girl was from a particularly anal retentive clan when it came to controlling the relationships of its members, so nothing was going to come out of it. Well, the girl's older brothers were most likely going to beat the crap out of the boy, but he would survive. Pursing her lips in consideration, Ino decided to be magnanimous today and save her classmate from some pain. Her hands joined under the table just as the boy reached the girl's desk, causing her to turn toward him, her big brown eyes blinking in an innocent curiosity. The boy opened his mouth, and abruptly turned a bit to the side toward Inyazuka Kiba, who sat there before shouting for the entire classroom to hear, "I love you. Please go out with me." The entire room was suddenly silenced while Kiba froze, his expression slowly turning into a weirded-out grimace. "Dude, just, no." The dog boy eventually managed to say to the other boy, who now stared wide-eyed at him in utter shock with his jaw on the floor, having a hard time believing what he had just done. Ino cheerfully observed them from the back of the classroom as she removed the small amount of her yin chakra from the boy, grinning at a job well done. She loved experimenting with her clan techniques, especially after getting some ideas from her teacher. Figuring out how to not send her entire spirit into somebody with her clan jutsu was hard, and then figuring out how to not take over but subtly influence the other person was even harder. But it was oh so rewarding. Ino's eyes mischievously roamed the classroom. She needed more practice if she wanted to pull the technique off without hand seals. Fortunately, she had many unknowing guinea pigs just lining up for the slaughter. Ino's hands once again made a hand seal under her table, and Akamaro, who sat in Kiba's, had suddenly lost control of his bladder, making the confession situation even more memorable as both Akamaro and Kiba released a long miserable whimper before Kiba bolted out of the classroom. Hopefully, he was going to be embarrassed enough to prevent him from asking her out for at least a week, but Ino had her doubts. It was hard to teach an old dog new tricks. A girl with her back turned toward the window suddenly ducked, barely evading a blunted kunai that flew into the classroom from the outside. At the same time, a boy got a friendly shove from his friend, causing him to be missed by the blunted kunai by less than an inch. And Koji olishly blinked in incomprehension as he abruptly pulled his lunchbox, avoiding its destruction when the blunted kunai slammed into the middle of his desk only a second later. At the front of the classroom, Sakura tripped and accidentally headbutted Suzuki's groin, earning the achievement of being the first person to make him moan as he almost toppled from pain when his dick slammed into the iron wall that was Sakura's forehead. Ino's eyes gleamed. Her yin chakra was subtle enough that unless her victims are focused, they don't even realize they are under the influence. Sure, it probably won't work on skilled ninjas, yet, but Ino was nothing if not hardworking when it came to causing chaos. Oi! Stop it! Suddenly, Shikamaru's voice interrupted her fun. "I am not doing anything," Ino whispered to the boy who lazily lay on the desk next to her, watching her with only one of his eyes groggily open while managing to make it look like a monumental drag. "Suyur," he drawled and yawned. "Go back to sleep." Ino rolled her eyes, only for Shikamaru to mumble under his nose, "Troublesome blonde." He got a kick to his shin courtesy of said troublesome blonde for his effort, causing him to yelp and give the smug Ino an annoyed look. Inwardly, Ino sighed in disappointment. It was such a pity that she couldn't invite Shikamaru and Koji to her teacher's lessons. She asked Ren if he was willing to teach them when she was just starting out and got an entire lecture about the village's clan politics. Yuck. In simple terms, teaching two daughters of clan heads was already putting Ren on some radars. If he started accumulating clan heirs as his students, that would make him an extremely suspicious person really fast. It would seem to the movers and shakers of Konoha as if Ren was trying to influence them when they were young and stupid, which was a big no-no. A boy managed to catch himself on the side of a table after tripping up, most likely avoiding a concussion because his head was on a direct course for collision with the opening door. Ren told Ino that she could invite Sakura to their training sessions, and she tried, but the pinkette thought it to be some kind of trick or something and refused to show up. It made Ino a bit sad. She missed the times when her friendship with Sakura was okay. Great. Now she was annoyed and sad. At the front of the classroom, Sakura, who was fussily apologizing to the Uchiha who was barely starting to recover from getting a headbutt to the dick and tried to stand up, suddenly seemed to lose her balance again and headbutted the Uchiha for real this time, sending him crashing back to the ground. Ino giggled. Better. A girl leaned to the side just as her friend did a spit take in her direction due to a joke from another friend in her group. Okay, so she might be a bit annoyed at Suzuki for constantly trying to ask her about Hinata. She wasn't above being petty and vindictive. Naruto somehow resisted Ino's influence, causing her to frown, got hit by a small ball a boy was playing with and it caused him to lose his balance as he was doing something with. Ino blinked. Was that a can of paint? The orange boy hit the can of paint with his elbow as he waved his arms while trying to regain his balance, causing it to topple all over him. For the first time in his life, Naruto's tracksuit was no longer orange but neon green. Well, sucks to be him. Ino shrugged and released her hand seal before resting her cheek on her hand, inwardly snickering as she noticed Sasuke going in her direction while rubbing his forehead and sporting a heavy scowl, all the while Sakura was still vehemently apologizing to him, seemingly on the verge of tears. Poor girl. Ino put on the biggest crazed fangirl expression in her repertoire and released a loud dreamy sigh when Sasuke was close enough to hear it as her blue eyes stared directly into his black ones. She took a vindictive pleasure from the fact that the boy seemed to hesitate for a moment, and from his gaze, it was obvious he was deeply thinking if approaching her was worth it. Alas, in the end, a split second passed and he took another step forward in her direction. As Ino stared at the approaching Sasuke, she already knew he was going to ask about Hinata, and that made her instantly recall the Hyuga girl standing on her toes, pressing her lips to the mouth of her teacher with the shaggy long blonde hair she wanted to caress and pamper, and Shikamaru instinctively shuffled a bit further away from Ino, the hair at the back of his neck standing in warning as he gave the blonde girl a wary side glance. The girl had a pleasant and inviting smile on her face, and yet, it seemed hella fake and forced to his trained eyes. Plus, the floor under her right foot was slightly cracking. Shikamaru instantly decided he didn't want to get involved before standing up and casually, okay, he very speedily walked away. Remembering the kiss she witnessed, Ino was inwardly fuming. No longer focusing on what was in front of her eyes, Ino barely registered when Sasuke finally reached her. He opened his mouth and started speaking. Yamanaka, I'd like to ask Dasho? Asking me for a date? Ino pleasantly asked, interrupting Sasuke. No, I want to know oh, my. Asking for a girl's 3 sizes? How shameless of you, Sasuke-kun. Ino embarrassedly giggled. But I guess I can Yamanaka. Sasuke put a bit more force into his very serious tone. But it didn't make Ino stop. Her eyes glanced at Sakura, and a split-second decision was made. She didn't feel like playing this game any longer. I am sorry, Sasuke. I can't date you. Ino released a regretful sigh, causing Sasuke to look at her as if she had grown a second head. My body craves somebody else. She spoke in a tone full of pity aimed at Sasuke, as if feeling sorry for him that he missed out on her. She even clapped her hands together and gave him a wink for a better dramatic impression. A bit further away, Sakura's jaw dropped when she witnessed their short interaction, and she had a supremely hard time believing she was not dreaming. Her biggest love rival had just given up? Sakura felt both ecstatic and somewhat wistful, as if she had just lost something that was unknowingly important to her. Sasuke stared at Ino, incomprehension and disbelief coloring his expression, his mouth open while his brain was trying to deal with the extremely annoying blonde who made every interaction a massive pain in the ass. Still, he didn't expect to be rejected by her, so the situation was so out of left field that it gave him a mental stumble. Just when Sasuke's mind rebooted and an annoyed scowl appeared on his face, he threw a small glare Ino's way, the Hyuga only for him to get a mouthful of a chalkboard eraser because the neon green Naruto, who was trying to set up another prank with an annoyed pout, once again lost his balance, and the eraser in his hand just so managed to be thrown in Sasuke's direction as it flew through half of the classroom and hit him directly in the mouth just as he opened it. Coincidences were simply everywhere today, huh? Naturally, that sparked a fight between the bastard and the dead last, so Ino just stood up and walked away, deep in thought and irritably chewing on her lower lip as the last wisp of invisible wind chakra around her fingers faded into non-existence. There is no way she was going to let the bitch win. Now, how is she supposed to manipulate her annoyingly dense teacher to bend her over the table and have his dastardly way with her? Chapter 54, ch 54. 1 Dense. The week Ren took a break for his project quickly passed and Ino came to their usual training grounds, noticing that Hinata was already there and only their teacher was still missing. Coming closer, Ino saw that Hinata with her jacket off was disgruntledly healing some unpleasant-looking bruises and winced at their purple discoloration. Her happy mood instantly soured as she approached the Hyuga girl. She didn't need to be told what happened. It was obvious. Hinata showed up with bruises at least once a month. This was a recurring occurrence at this point. Why don't you just beat her ass and be done with it? Ino mulishly asked without even greeting Hinata first. She tried to appear calm, but her blue eyes were glaring at the bruises alongside the Ravenette's arms and her hands were clenched into fists. Over the months of their joint training, Ino came to like Hinata. She was like a very annoying little sister, whom she liked to tease in order to increase her confidence. She didn't like seeing her hurt. Hanabi is my sister. Hinata casually shrugged, not bothered by the pain as she focused on the healing. She was used to it by now. She had to do a very delicate job with the healing. Her goal was to preserve the bruised appearance while healing everything below the skin. That was quite the challenge for her current medical ninjutsu skill, so she had to put a lot of focus on the process. Ino sighed in exasperation, but whatever she wanted to say was interrupted when Ren appeared near them in Shunshin, cheerfully smiling as he waved at them. Then he noticed Hinata's bruises and his smile turned into a frown. He sighed, in much the same way Ino had done just a few seconds ago, but decided to forego commenting on it. He already had a conversation about it with Hinata, and unfortunately, there was nothing they could do unless they wanted to alert the Hyuga family to the fact that Hinata was stronger than she tried to portray. Her desired goal was to prevent both her sister and herself from being sealed, and the only way to accomplish that was to reveal her power to the clan only when she was strong enough to strong-arm them into following her will. If she did it sooner, they would just seal her sister and give her back her clan heirship. So, she had to endure losing the monthly sparring with her sister. "Hello, how was your week?" Ren asked the girls as he came closer to them, and they greeted him back and started talking at the same time, only to stop and look at each other with annoyed expressions. Ren mentally chuckled and his lips stretched into a smile again as the girls reached a silent agreement and Hinata spoke about her week first. He leaned against a nearby tree and listened, letting her rant and vent, or proudly show her progress, and even praised her when she bashfully presented her attempt at cooking. After around 20 minutes, Hinata was done and it was Ino's time to speak. Needless to say, Ren almost choked when he heard her proudly proclaim she used her classmates to learn how to seamlessly inject yin chakra into her victims. Yes, the Ninja Academy was for training ninjas. The kids didn't notice Ino's meddling? Sucks to be them. They just have to get better if they don't want to suffer more of her pranks. It's why Naruto's pranks are tolerated too. Contrary to popular belief, the Orange Menace does not target only his teachers. He targets his classmates too, and his pranks are good alertness training for the kids. So, even if Ino's mischief were to be discovered by her teachers, she would get no punishment as long as she didn't cause any permanent harm. No, it would be Ren who would get proper verbal trashing for his teaching methods because he was her tutor. This was the kind of shit he could end up in TNI for. Seriously, one day, the blonde girl was going to cause him an aneurysm. Alright, Ren shook his head, deciding to move on with their meeting. He indulged them, but now it was time to give them a little surprise. "Your academy year is coming to an end and I decided to organize a small outing with you too." He smirked when the girls seemed excited. Oh, they had no idea what awaited them and he was going to enjoy their suffering every step of the way. "Your parents already agreed. The first day of your holiday, we are going bandit hunting," he said, and suddenly, neither of the two girls was so excited anymore. Now they looked a bit conflicted and unsure because they knew what that meant. The primary reason for their outing was not training but to get them blooded, to have their first kill. Ren would love to avoid this unpleasantness. And yes, he could have left it in the hands of their future Jonin instructors. He really wanted to do it too, but that would be doing a disservice to the girls. "Okay, it's going to be a walk in the park," Ino exclaimed in her usual fashion, but her heart was not in it. Hinata, on the other hand, was anxiously clutching her hands, trying to appear outwardly calm but her eyes betrayed her unease. "Don't think too much about it," Ren said in an attempt to reassure the girls. "It is still 2 weeks away. I have a more important announcement to make." "Oh? Did you knock some kunoichi up or something?" Ino innocently asked, clearly trying to distract herself by reverting to her usual teasing self, only to jump back, avoiding a chakra poke to her ribs courtesy of irritated Hinata who might have overreacted. Ren didn't take it too seriously and just rolled his eyes at Ino. "Don't worry. You will be the first to know if such a thing happens," and he was afraid he wasn't even joking. Ino had a penchant for gossip before he became her teacher, but now that she could use her clan techniques more freely, now that she was finding new ways of using them without anybody even noticing and getting better at it by the day, he loved the girl, but there was a reason why he wore a yin containment seal on his person all the time. There would be no Yamanaka mental naughty going on in his mind without him getting alerted. Fortunately, she hadn't tried to get a sneak peek at his thoughts so far. "How forward of you," Ino giggled. Ren raised his eyebrow at her while Hinata too gave her a curious glance. Noticing it, Ino decided to explain herself. "Well, the mother would obviously be the first person to know if she is pregnant or not." Ino explained and leaned forward while giving Ren a flirty smile. "I wouldn't mind. But you will have to talk with my daddy if you want to get a piece of this fine ass." Ino gave her posterior a soft pat and grinned at Ren, only to get a kick to her shin from the disgruntled Hinata, causing the blonde to yowl in pain and jump away, pulling her leg up in order to hold her hurt shin. "What is wrong with you, bitch?" Ino cried with mock outrage. "Don't think I don't know what you are doing, bimbo," Hinata flatly said, giving Ino a nonplussed look while trying to kick her again. And Ren was out of his depth as he wondered where the meek and kind Hinata had gone. Suddenly, Ino jumped at him after evading another of Hinata's strikes, and he ended up catching her in a princess carry. Ren blinked at Ino. Ino blinked at Ren, and Hinata blinked at both Ren and Ino. Ren opened his mouth to make a quip about their situation, but Ino abruptly put her hands around his head and pulled herself up, ending with her lips on his. Except, that was not enough for her as her tongue invaded his mouth and started eagerly exploring. "MHM. Ino moaned, waking Ren up from his shock and causing him to stop supporting her body with his hands, dropping her onto the ground like a sack of potatoes. Ren looked at Hinata, who sported a very cold expression as she stared daggers at Ino, who lay on the grass near Ren's feet. His eyes moved toward Ino, noticing that she was quietly giggling to herself, her face flushed. "What?" Ren almost staggered back. "Don't tell me." He once again glanced at Hinata, then back at Ino, before he owlishly blinked, only to inwardly groan as a realization hit him like a truck. "Oh, I am one dense motherfucker." Chapter 55, ch 55, Dilemma and Agreement. Ren felt truly exhausted. He had just finished having a long conversation with his students about why it would be a really bad idea to have a relationship with him. He tried his best to persuade them to cease and desist. But no matter what he said, Ino and Hinata were teenage girls and Ren had no idea what was going through their heads at that point in their development. Somehow, the more their talk progressed, the worse it got. Halfway through it, the girls even stopped staring daggers at each other and somehow made up. Needless to say, Ren had no idea what was going on. He completely lost control of the entire conversation and things were happening in a way he just wasn't optimized to understand. Give him ninja stuff any day of the week and he will be fine despite his dislike for the profession, but managing teenage kunoichi and heat? When chakra does fucky things with their physical and mental development? He tried to tell them he was too old for them, only to be reminded that he was still a teenager himself. Which, fair. He had no retort to that. It was not like he was one of those weirdos who believed a reincarnated person should go for somebody who equaled them in their mental age. He would have to go for ladies in their 40s if that was the case, which, no thank you very much. Ren didn't believe in mental age. Sure, he was adult-level mature since he was a kid, but he didn't particularly feel as if he had somehow mentally grown or aged since then all that much. He was happy to count his physical age as his true age. He even tried to point out to the girls that their clans wouldn't like it, and fortunately, that seemed to make Hinata hesitate a bit. At least, until Ino opened her big mouth, confidently telling him to leave it to her, that she would handle her daddy if necessary. And Ren truly pitied Inoichi at that moment. Sage willing, Ren didn't want to be cursed with a daughter like Ino. That would be a complete nightmare. Unfortunately, there went all the progress with Hinata as she regained her determination, and Ren could tell from her expression she was not going to budge from her decision anymore. By the end of it, the two girls actually agreed to share him, much to his despair. How we shouldn't date became don't worry, we can share you. Ren had no freaking idea. He was lost like any other average guy. He was going for a completely opposite result. The girls even threw a law book at him, of all things. And yes, polygamy was not against the law in Konoha, but damn it, it was he who should be throwing law books on them, not the other way around. That was cheating, and Ren didn't like when the other people did that. He decided he would have his revenge on the girls for this. He was going to throw a law book of his own on them soon. Damn, he felt like some stupid harem anime protagonist. In his past life, he was always the noble and passionate keyboard warrior who berated the main characters for their natural density. But now he was in their spot and he wanted nothing more than earth to swallow him whole due to embarrassment. He felt for them now, completely understanding how this shit could happen. Talk about gaining a completely new perspective. He thought their team interaction was just general friendly banter. Subconsciously, he still believed that Hinata would end up with Naruto, even if that ship had apparently sailed and sunk long ago, and Ino with that freaky pale root guy. Because of that assumption, he never even considered the option that his presence once again changed things without him even trying to do so. After Hinata kissed him, he kinda panicked and told the girls he was taking a week-long break for a personal project. And sure, he did work on some seal work, but he mostly agonized about the bomb dropped into his lap in the guise of the Hyuga girls' affection. What was he supposed to do with that? He was certain that if the Hyuga clan knew, they would try to crucify him. Hell, Hayashi would try to gentle fist his ass to the moon. Not that the Hyuga clan head would find a lot of success in that endeavor, but it would still be annoying for Ren. Let's not even talk about the consequences Hinata would be facing. And when Ren had just decided to, maybe go for it? He wasn't even sure, but he did like Hinata quite a bit. He decided to just let things progress naturally and end where the wind takes them. But the very first damn training they had together after his break, Ino comes and does this shit, destroying any semblance of pretense that things were going to work out somehow on their own. In the end, Ren made a compromise with the girls. They agreed to take things slowly, even if Ino wasn't very happy about it. Frankly speaking, it was not that he didn't find them desirable. Hinata was downright adorable and beautiful with her long hair. She looked closer to her Shippuden self, except less shy. She was still a total sweetheart. And she had that Yamato Nadeshiko thing going for her that made Ren's heart skip a beat whenever she smiled. As for Ino, the Yamanaka girl was flat out gorgeous. Curves in all the right places, well-toned body, hair so amazing that models in Ren's past life would be seething in jealousy. The first time Ren met her, he stared. And he still sometimes found himself visually appreciating her presence. But apparently, he was not as sneaky as he thought. Ino even stopped wearing her long hair in a ponytail so much and let it fall free on her shoulders and back when Ren offhandedly commented he preferred it that way. In hindsight, that really should have clued him in. He had some unpleasant flashbacks to his teenage years during his previous life. He was a dense idiot back then too, so really, he had experience in that department. He remembers that he was always proud of becoming more aware with age, only for this to happen. The girls were 15, but physically their bodies were almost done with their development. Chakra was unfair like that. The more a person used it, the more it sped things up. No wonder Itaka looked like an adult during the Uchiha massacre despite being just 13 at the time. But mentally, Ren would say his students were still teenage girls. They would totally disagree, of course. Chakra sped up mental development too. It was a scientifically proven fact or some other nonsense they threw at him during their argument in a fully unreasonable female fashion. And they did have a certain maturity to them that normal girls their age had no business having. But Ren had seen their childish side far too many times. Hell, he even participated in many of their bouts of childishness because it was genuine fun. Well, according to his logic that meant he was a childish teenager too, but let's ignore that, okay? Chunin privileges. He might be 17 but he had the headband, therefore he was an adult. The law book said so too. Besides, the civilians in this world were considered adults on their 15th birthday. It was the ninjas who were the weird ones. Especially now, after the reforms. Previously, they were adults at 13. Nowadays, they were adults at 16, a whole year later than even the civilians. Ren still told both Ino and Hinata that there would be no hanky-panky with them until they had their headbands. It was his last moral line of defense he was not going to cross no matter what. He wanted to be upfront with the girls. They were minors according to the law and Ren did not need problems from that direction. There was a reason why no ninja approached them yet with offers of quick stress relief, despite them being so beautiful and despite the sight of guys banging 15-year-old civilian girls in the side alley being quite common in the village if you knew where to look. A part of him was hoping the girls would just give up when he told them his bottom line, but Ino simply pouted and complained like a particularly bratty child who wanted a new toy, and Hinata gave him a big sad puppy dog eye stare paired with a downright adorable sad frown. Honestly, Ren doubted the Hyuga girl had any idea she was doing it, but Ino's reaction was completely deliberate. But the girls accepted it easily, much to his relief. Despite Ino's bravado, both girls were new to the whole affection stuff and Ren found the situation awkward for different reasons entirely, so neither of them was jumping into it headfirst. The girls left his apartment after that and Ren was having an honest-to-God dilemma. The primitive male part in him wanted them. The intelligent part in him cautioned him that it would destroy the canon further. Only to add that the canon was fucked 7 ways to Sunday anyway. Before admitting the girls were hot, his intelligent part wanted them too. His intelligent part realized he was fucked. Being a teenager again sucks. Ren mentally grumbled with an annoyed huff. His hormones were really screwing him over. Ah, whatever. I'll figure it out later. I'll just channel Suzuki and HN them into submission like a proper Narutoverse Gigachad main character, or something equally ridiculous. For now, he needed to find a law book he could throw at the girls for his revenge. Chapter 56 CH 56. A small revenge. Ren arrived at the last training meeting before their mission. The girls had just finished their academy year earlier today and he came bearing gifts. Seeing Hinata and Ino sitting in the grass in the middle of the clearing they usually used for training, he approached them. Hello. Ren appeared in Shunshin near the girls, giving them a small jump scare. Here, have these. He abruptly but gleefully dropped identical books to the lap of each girl. 2 very big and thick books. What's this? Ino asked, picking up the book as if it was trash and looking at it in disgust. She was never a fan of reading, despite her ability to just leaf through a book and then learn the knowledge in her mindscape, taking almost no time at all in the real world. She still avoided books like a plague, making all true blondes of Narutoverse immensely proud. If Naruto knew of her dedication to the way of the blonde, he would probably give her a year-long ticket for exclusion from his pranks. Konoha's ninja regulations and command structure? Hinata read the book's name, frowning in incomprehension. What did that have to do with them right now? They were still academy students. They still had a year before this became relevant to them. Yes, exactly. Ren wasn't deterred by the sour expressions of his adorably clueless pupils. He naturally threw it at them as a form of revenge. Of course, he couldn't tell them that. Instead, he cheerfully spoke the biggest bullshit he uttered all month with practiced ease. Since we are going on a mission, I decided it would be great if you learned a bit more about PFFF. He really couldn't help the snicker, the legality, of it. He almost burst into laughter. Both due to the flabbergasted gazes from Ino and Hinata and because just saying the word legality when mentioning ninja missions was hilarious irony. We learned ninja rules in the academy already. Ino huffily retorted and threw the book away from her, only for Ren's grin to widen. It wouldn't be much of a revenge if his cute minions could just discard the book at their leisure, now, would it? A seal planted on the book flared when it got 3 feet away from Ino and suddenly, the blonde was smacked in the face with the heavy and thick book, causing her to topple over onto the grass while Ren snickered under his nose. Even Hinata's lips twitched into a small smile while Ino stared at the blue sky in shock, a red imprint of the book's outline coloring her face as said book lay in the grass next to her face. Oh, Ren was sure that Ino would try again. He could see it in her beautiful blue eyes that suddenly gained a spark of veiled defiance. She was going to take this as a challenge. But unfortunately for her, she had far too many of his seals inscribed on her body. So, the book will be teleporting back, straight into her face, until Ren deemed that she learned the contents. Nah, you learned trash in the academy. Ren snorted. The ninja rules they recited in the academy for their exams? Nobody cared about those. They were like learning about old stories in a literature class in Ren's previous life. Nice to know for a reference but mostly useless in real life. This, though? He gestured at the book. These are legally binding rules describing how our grand, he added a bit of sarcasm, military village actually works from a legal perspective. Things you need to know if you want to take advantage of the system. He was always going to throw this book at the girls. The only difference was that they pissed him off a bit so they had it thrown at them way sooner than he initially intended. And trust me, the system will take advantage of you if you don't know the rules. He slightly leaned forward and cautioned them in a serious tone. Be better. Learn to exploit. There was a very important lesson in there. Somewhere. Have you learned this too? Ino unhappily asked. But of course, the lesson went right over her head. not because she was stupid, but because she was now provoked and distracted enough to not think about the deeper meaning of the situation she was in. Yeah, this was Ren's revenge, but the book was important for their career. Yet, Ino didn't even consider it. Sigh, he was going to have to be a bit mean then. Are you crazy? Of course, not. Ren exclaimed, widening his eyes in disbelief at the blonde girl. Who in their right mind would do that? Do you see how thick that book is? He wildly gestured at the book. Hearing him, Ino gave him her meanest scowl as she crossed her arms on her chest, and we have to learn it because, she trailed off, because I told you to, duh. Ren gave her the widest grin he managed. Fuck you, Ino exclaimed in utter disbelief. But Ren only rolled his eyes at her. You wish. You are just mad we pointed out that polygamy is legal, aren't you? Ino heatedly argued, throwing the book away again, this time at Ren who just caught it, and gave Ino a smirk before throwing it behind himself. Then he just enjoyed the loud smack that resounded through the clearing as the book teleported and collided with Ino's face again. I don't know what you are talking about, Ren politely responded, but there was a small vindictive edge in his tone. How was he supposed to remember that? Sure, he probably did read it somewhere in the past, but most notable ninjas were either too fucked up in the head for relationships or had one wife because the morons loved to live on the edge, so of course they went for a dangerous kunoichi who didn't want to share. Honestly, it would make his life simpler if Ino and Hinata were that way too. Alas, no such luck. Why was he even complaining again? He had two gorgeous girls throwing themselves at him. Two girls who wanted to get into his bed, and the only reason he refused them was that according to the ninja standards they were still minors despite being adults by the civilian rules. The next year was going to be pure horny torture for him, wasn't it? Ren inwardly sighed, not looking forward to it at all. Learning this will be very useful to us. Hinata suddenly interjected and nodded with gratitude at Ren, making him fondly smile at her. At least one of his students appreciated the effort he put into preparing them for their ninja career. Will we get a reward for doing it? Hinata asked, getting a particular gleam in her eyes. Or not. She didn't appreciate his effort. She just wanted a reward. Go figure. Ren sighed in exasperation. His students started to stop being cute. He wondered where they learned to be like this. Somebody was corrupting them. Must be the academy. You know what? Okay. Yes. You can have a reward for it. Within reason. Ren rolled his eyes at her, getting a happy smile in return. Well, he'd say it was worth it. Okay. Hinata demurely agreed with another satisfied nod, and Ren turned toward his discontent blonde disciple. See, Ino? He gave her a meaningful look. That's how you react to an unexpected and unpleasant situation and manage to wheedle something you want out of it. Ino nodded with a fake cheer before asking, can oral sex be a reward? This girl was not listening to him, was she? That or she was deliberately screwing with him. Well, she was a Yamanaka, so it could be either or. No. Ren deadpanned at her. But and that's how you can lose the reward privileges, he dryly added, only for Ino to click her tongue and grumpily avert her gaze with a huff as she crossed her arms under her chest again. Ren couldn't help but smile at her. He knew she was trying to manipulate him, but honestly, her attempts were almost cute. Shaking his head, he decided to give her a bit of carrot with that stick. I'll still kiss you senseless once you learn it, Ren told her. Because honestly, I am looking forward to it as much as you. So, don't let me down, girl, MK? Ino blinked, then she flushed deep red and firmly nodded with a wide smile plastered on her face. But she didn't turn her head and look at Ren. She was quite intent on looking away from him, much to his amusement. Noticing Hinata's quiet Byakugan stare, Ren fluctuated his chakra in a certain pattern, sending a discreet message to the Hyuga girl, and there she went. Her face was just as flushed as Ino's. Ren's smile turned wry. His message hadn't even been anything indecent. He had no idea why she reacted that way, and by now, he was happy to just chalk it up to teenage hormones. Women were a mystery he didn't have the mental capacity to comprehend, but teenage girls? They were a mystery he didn't have any desire to comprehend. It would probably have some eldritch Thulhu effect on his psyche if he managed it anyway. So, as one genius penguin once said, well, that's all for today's meeting. Don't train today. Rest up because tomorrow morning we are leaving the village for a mission, he said, and waved at the girls. Then he smiled at them, before disappearing without even giving them a chance to reply. The ancient penguin knowledge clearly worked. He heard no retort or complaint. You're like fuels our passion to bring more translations. Thank you from Infinite Novel.